The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, and dear participants, dear guests. My name is Aissatou Gissé. I am IOM Chief Official in Burkina Faso. I feel honored to be the Master of Ceremony of such an important event on human mobility and climate change. As you might know, climate mobility is a top priority of Penny Pope, our Director General, who took office in our headquarters the 1st of October. Welcome to this event. As you know, IOM is convening us today as the leading intergovernmental migration agency to have a pre-IDM regional dialogue and bring a perspective from West and Central Africa around the subject. Think about tomorrow, act today, the future of human mobility and climate change. The aim of this meeting is to have an informal dialogue among key experts and other stakeholders on policy dialogue, integrating a whole of government and whole of society approach with concrete solutions and actions for the affected communities by migration and climate change. To remind, IOM is organizing the 2023 International Dialogue on Migration from the 5th to 6th of October in Geneva, Switzerland. On the theme, Think About Tomorrow, Act Today, the Future of Human Mobility and Climate Change. It will promote cross-thematic and cross-regional linkages, highlighting challenges, opportunities, and good practices to help place climate mobility high on the global and regional agenda. Building upon the adoption of the Kampala Ministerial Environment and Climate Change, among other key regional developments, and in preparation of the second 2023 IDM session, IOM's Regional Office for West and Central Africa is organizing today a pre-IDM regional dialogue to further engage in dialogue ahead of the global IDM to bring forth key messages to the IDM in October. The objective of the session is to address the specific climate vulnerabilities in West and Central Africa and have a regional approach to human mobility and climate action. It will be key to bringing perspectives from the region and contributions throughout the discussion of the IDM in Geneva in October 2023. Before starting, I would like to give this key information about the event. It will, as you see, it is taking place online and for 3 hours, and will comprise of 2 panels and 1 Q&A session after each panel. Interpretation is available in English, Portuguese, and French. Participants requiring interpretation are requested to use their headphones and connect to the respective interpretation channel. The event is conducted online and plans to have an open participation and interaction with the panelists after each panel using the chat boxes. The event is open to a broad audience. The event will be recorded and live streamed on YouTube. Participants can use the hashtag climate mobility to react on Twitter X. Now we are going to the welcoming remarks in this first session. We will have the honor to have IOM Regional Director, Mr. Christopher Gascon, for the opening remarks, and also the Honorable Minister of Environment and Climate Change of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Mr. Jiwo Abdullahi. Christopher, the floor is over to you.
Thank you, Aissatou. Thank you for those opening remarks and laying out our agenda. Let me start by welcoming our Honorable Minister. Thank you very much for joining us. We're quite honored to have you, as well as the esteemed panelists and participants, ladies and gentlemen. So I'll leave here all protocols observed. I'm really quite honored to be here today, and I thank you for joining our regional dialogue on migration. This is a great opportunity for us to discuss and share experiences on human mobility in the context of climate change here in West and Central Africa. Mr. Jiwo Abdullahi, Honorable Minister of Environment and Climate Change of the Republic of Sierra Leone, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Republic of Sierra Leone for the signature of the Continental Kampala Declaration on Migration, Environment, and Climate Change, which was held last month in Nairobi. Ladies and gentlemen, we can no longer talk about climate change without talking about human mobility, especially in our region here in West and Central Africa. The Internal Displacement Center reports, Displacement Monitoring Center reports that as of the end of 2022, this region accounted for over 1,150,000 internally displaced persons due to events such as floods, storms, or landslides. By 2050, the region is expected to be the most impacted by rapid urbanization. And the World Bank forecasts that probably 32 million people will be compelled to move within their countries if no climate action is taken and inclusive development implemented. And this obviously could increase as these estimates do not take into consideration rapid onset hazards, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I've said it before, and I will now say it again. It's time to act. Moving to more mundane matters today, congratulations are owed to the governments of this region for the formulation and signature of the Continental Kampala Declaration on Migration, Environment, and Climate Change. This is the first government-led, comprehensive, and action-oriented framework that concretely addresses climate-induced mobility issues. Let me highlight that solutions do exist and that are being implemented at the community level. These include nature-based responses, such as agroecology, agroforestry, and renewable energies, which are already being tested on the ground, but need to be scaled up, counting on climate financing, which has to come. To achieve our goals, strong partnerships are vital. To start, IOM cooperates with the United Nations Working Group on Climate Change, Environment, Security, and Development for West Africa, and also with the Regional United Nations Migration Network. These are just some of the partnerships that have to be established. Now we must rise to the challenge and act now for tomorrow. I'm sure that today will bring fruitful discussions, as will the next days to come. This is a great opportunity for us to start really thinking together and see what we can accomplish. So I thank you again for being with us, and I thank you for your attention for this short introductory remark.
Thank you very much, Christopher, for your very inspiring words for this opening remark. Now I'm going to give the floor to His Honorable Minister of Environment and Climate Change of Republic of Sierra Leone, Mr. Jiwo Abdullahi. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Aissatou. Good morning all, and thank you for inviting me to this timely meeting. Timely in the sense that migration is one of the issues that Sierra Leone factors into our climate conversations on mitigation and adaptation. And the reason being that Sierra Leone, like many countries in West Africa region, continues to experience changes in rainfall patterns, rising temperatures, increasing risks of droughts, floods, rising sea level, among other climate-induced changes. For the past few decades, this has affected the lives and livelihoods of citizens across the country, especially economic sectors like agriculture, water, energy, and infrastructure. The worst affected areas are islands and coastal zones. As a result of these climate issues, human mobility has gained increased attention from stakeholders in government, civil society, and development partners. As you all know, Sierra Leone is a signatory to the newly expanded Kampala Declaration on Migration and Climate. And we recognize that climate change is a major driver and enabler for human mobility efforts to build resilience requires a whole of government and a whole of society approach. We're looking at this both internal migration and migration across borders. We, as a government, have renewed our commitment to strive to include human mobility dimensions in the national development and promote nature-based solutions to adapt and mitigate against climate change. Part of that, our mitigation efforts, is to try to keep people in their communities by providing alternatives and in extreme cases, look at migration. A lot of effort has been put into updating our interim national adaptation plan. And typically, we do that through systemic and bottom-up national level consultative processes so that all stakeholders have a say in how the country moves forward. And additionally, Minister of Environment takes a collaborative approach. We work with other ministries, departments, agencies, and stakeholders outside of governments, including IOM, which is supporting us through the disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation IOM is currently supporting.
Dear Honorable Minister, sorry, the sound is very bad from our hand.
Can you hear me better?
Yes, it's much better.
I may have to turn off video just so that the sound is better. Will that be okay?
Yes, okay, yes, please.
Sure. Can you hear me well now?
Yes.
Yes, much better.
Okay, yes. So IOM is supporting the Ministry of Environment through the EPA, which is our Environment Protection Agency, to collect scientific data on vulnerabilities of coastal and island communities to climate change in Sierra Leone, which will provide a clear picture of evolution of selected islands of Yelibuya and Plantain, and also help us inform policy on adaptation and mitigation measures for these island and coastal communities in the country, which are highly susceptible to threats of climate change. On the regional front, Sierra Leone, in solidarity with member states in the West African region, Sierra Leone is co-chairs of the Migration Dialogue in West Africa, is committed to working through the regional engagements to sharing experiences and challenges through a consultative process on migration to foster solidarity, partnership, and shared responsibility. We have and we see the same problems, and collectively we think we can share ideas to resolve these problems. Now, as we gather today to think about tomorrow, there's several opportunities through which migrants can contribute to building resilience and adaptation to climate change, as well as mitigation of climate change-induced disasters in Sierra Leone. IOM, among other development partners, have continued to demonstrate this through their various work programs in the country. For example, IOM is currently engaged in beach cleanup exercises in the country, which are not only a source of income for over 500 returned migrants, but also create safe recreational areas and Freetown beaches free from marine pollution. Additionally, these migrants have engaged in drainage cleanup exercises as disaster prevention measures in Freetown. These activities can be scaled up to provide more opportunities for youth in the country. The West and Central Africa dialogue on migration happening today provides an opportunity for us to come together and to discuss integrated human mobility due to climate change in all development sectors. The dialogue should also provide tailor-made and not a one-size-fits-all perspective to engage all stakeholders, including private sector, and in climate-friendly investments. This will not only help to leapfrog development, but provide much-needed empowerment opportunities for young African population. I hope one of the things that comes out today that we keep in mind, not just today, but going forward, and not just this conversation, but climate conversations across the board. We're talking about human beings here, and climate is not an abstract concept. Climate change is not an abstract concept. Climate change affects human beings. And when it affects people's livelihoods, people would naturally take measures to mitigate and adapt to those effects. And one of the best ways that we're thinking as a government is try to have these mitigation and adaptation at the local level to try to reduce the external migration, but also try to integrate or reintegrate people who have migrated and are returning to productive sectors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Jiwu Abdullahi. Thank you very much for highlighting Sierra Leone's strong engagement on this agenda and highlighting also your experience with us. Thank you very much. Before moving to the first session, I would like just to notice Ambassador Neng presence in the room. He is one of the rapporteurs of the Kampala Ministerial Declaration on Migration, Environment and Climate Change. We are very grateful for that, for his presence in the room. I would like also to ask the participants to notice that the chat box where they will be able to drop questions for discussion after the panels. Now I'm going to give the floor to Hind Benasui, our regional thematic specialist on migration and climate change, with some introductory remarks regarding the state of play of knowledge gathered by IOM on migration, environment, and climate change in the region before moving to the panels. Hind, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Aissatou, and thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for your important words, and thank you so much, Christopher, also for your inspiring opening remarks. I'm really glad that we have 90, almost 100 attendees in the room. The idea here, of course, is that you also share your views and that we discuss all together. And the idea is just a step in the dialogue we've been building for several years now, and that we hope it will we hope will be maintained and strengthened in this region. So I'm very proud to talk about this region, West and Central Africa, and also about human mobility. What are the trends? What are the challenges? What also maybe the opportunities that we have in the region in West and Central Africa when it comes to climate mobility or human mobility in the context of climate change. As my regional director just said, climate change is already impacting human mobility in the region, and as his honorable minister, climate change is not a concept. It's not it's not a concept. It's the realities and different realities, and each region, each country each locality has its specificities, so it's very important that we take climate change into account when we talk about migration, but also that we have this regional perspective and regional platforms so that we can exchange on what are the realities. And definitely in the region, we are in a region where communities and also governments, should they be local, but also national, and His Honorable Minister definitely highlighted that. We are in a region where communities and governments are at the front line. So it's very important that we hear not only their perceptions, but also the solutions that they're also proposing so that we can also build on this and scale it up. So as my regional director just said, according to the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, for people who are familiar with the acronym, it's IDMC. At the end of 2022, the region accounted for 1,156,000 IDPs, internally displaced persons, due to disasters. And when we talk about disasters in the region, we mainly talk about floods, storms, or landslides. And it stands for approximately 12% of the total internally displaced persons in West and Central Africa. We are also in a region where climate change threatens food production, the means of subsistence, and the agricultural income of rural households, in a region where agriculture represents 3 to 50% of GDP in most countries, and massively relies on labor migration. So what is important in these figures is agriculture is of course about food security, but also it's about development. And when we think of who is producing, generally we are talking about migrants, labor migrants, who are massively contributing to the economical development of the region. Another trend that we want to look at is the urbanization. We are in the fastest urbanizing region in the world, with unprecedented rates of urbanization. And I mean, it's on the news. The climate resilience of cities in the region is really at stake. So cities keep on being territories of opportunity for a lot of migrants. Also safe havens, for example, in the landlocked Sahelian countries, for example, cities are safe havens for internally displaced persons, whatever the reason they move. Cities hosts of the region hosts migrants and different categories of migrants. And at the same time, the climate resilience of the cities is at stake. So it's very important also that we think of the local governments when we discuss climate mobility in the region, so that we support the local governments in facing those multi-layered challenges. Maybe another figure is the figures of the World Bank, the famous Groundswell report that was published, the first one in 2018 and the second one in 2021. This report foresees that 30 million people could be compelled to move within their countries if no climate action and inclusive development is implemented. What it shows here also, we are talking mostly about internal migration, maybe intra-regional migration, and that we need also to take this into account. For example, in countries like Benin, coastal countries like Benin, Benin could see up to 45% of its own population, moving internally because of slow onset events. And here, I mean, the World Bank, the Groundswell report talks about slow onset events like land degradation, water scarcity, but also sea level rise, which is a major issue in our region. We cannot also discuss human mobility in the context of climate change in the region without considering transhumance. In recent years, climate change, environmental degradation, and disasters Urbanization, land privatization, changes in farming practices and insecurity have affected transhumance patterns, routes and periods, as well as relations with other communities. So in Mali, an IOM study that reported that 15% of herders surveyed had to change their initial itinerary, including 8% because they faced difficulties in accessing water or pasture. Respondents also mentioned wildfires and decrease of pastoral areas as some of the main issues affecting their mobility. Having said that, it's important also to remind that even in the context of climate change, not everyone has the option to move. So that's the reason why it's important when we produce knowledge, but also when we build policies and solutions for the communities, that immobility is also an issue. Forced immobility is also an issue. It's important that we find also solutions for people to move, not only solutions for people to stay and people on the move, but also solutions for people to move, because migration has always been part of the solution. And definitely in the context of climate change, it is an adaptation strategy to climate change. So what do we propose at IOM? It's an integrated approach. You can also, Mrs. Aïssatou Guissé just at the beginning talked about our new Director General, whose climate mobility is an overarching priority. But we do also have our institutional strategy. We can share also the link maybe in the chat. And the objective is to have a holistic approach, an integrated approach. My regional director just said it. We cannot do it together. It's time to act, but we cannot doing. We can not doing alone. We have to do it together. Sorry, I didn't want to say the contrary you said, but definitely we need to be together. Partnership is extremely important. We do not have the expertise in everything, so it's very important that people from the agroecological sector, from the private sector, youth, governments, civil society in general, academics, etc., are around the table so that we can also first of all, listen to the communities of the region and to their needs, document the solutions and the perceptions regarding climate change, and propose altogether solutions. I won't be longer, but definitely I would just like to thank you for all being here and for your interest on the topic. I'm sure there are a lot of things to do together in the next month, years. Thank you for being here. I'm available for any question. The floor is yours, Aïssatou.
Thank you very much, Hind, for these remarks that are really relevant to our conversation today, because you just set the scene with the strategies, the approaches that exist in the region. So we can now move to the first session, which will be on the implementation of the Kampala Declaration on Migration, Environment and Climate Change after the ministerial signature. What's next? And this session will be moderated by our colleague, Christodoulides. He is the Chief of Mission of Sierra Leone. And I would like to take time to mention that Christos worked since 2012 within several IOM missions across Africa, including Morocco, Mauritania, Niger, and lately Djibouti. So he is very experienced, and the floor is going to him to facilitate and introduce the session speakers and coordinate the session's discussion. Christos, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for this introduction. Good morning from Freetown, Sierra Leone. I'm very pleased to be with you this morning and to be the moderator of this first panel discussion. There were some, let us probably start with a quick housekeeping note. So should there be any technical issues Please do put it in the chat. If internet is a challenge, we can of course switch off our cameras. And at the end, there will be a dedicated question and answer session. So I would ask for our participants to raise their hands afterwards, or put it in the chat, or put the questions in the chat, and to which panelist the question is relates to. That being said, I mean, we all, as the Honorable Minister and our Regional Director highlighted, the Kampala Declaration is a comprehensive action-oriented framework led by the African states. So we all agree that what happened a couple of weeks back in Kenya, Nairobi, the signature itself and thus the endorsement was a significant milestone for the African states, and a real recognition that human mobility is a fundamental pillar in the climate change discussions. This will be the key purpose of this first panel, is to discuss the aftermath and to see what concrete solutions states could foresee for the implementation of the Kampala Declaration. To discuss these important questions, we had 3 panelists. Unfortunately, there were some changes last night. So Mr. Natifu from the Republic of Uganda unfortunately could not make it. I do not see the person that was appointed last minute, Mr. Kayemba. I don't see Mr. Kayemba online from the Republic of Uganda. So we will proceed with two panelists this morning. Allow me to introduce them. So the first one is Dr. Inobiang Abiola Awe. She is the Director of the Department of Climate Change at the Federal Ministry of Environment in Nigeria. Dr. Abiola brings over 20 years of extensive experience on the question of environment, climate change, and sustainable development. Her work goes through, I mean, she experienced, or she worked actively in the government, in private sector, in the NGO and international organizations. She holds a PhD in environmental sciences and a master's degree in environmental management. So Director, we are very pleased to have you with us this morning, and we are looking forward to the exchanges with you. The second panelist we have is a youth advocate, Ms. Nadia Awuzu from Ghana, Accra. So Ms. Nadia is very actively engaged in youth empowerment, entrepreneurship, and climate action. And she's particularly vocal for the most marginalized groups. And she makes sure and endorses or highlights the importance of digital channels as a form of advocacy for human rights, youth engagement, development, and climate change. So thanks, Ms. Nadia, as well for being with us this morning. I still do not see the representative of Uganda, so let us move on then. Dr. Abiola, the first question will go to you. 1 month ago, as we all said, your government was one of the over 40 African states who signed the Kampala Declaration. Could you tell us the reasoning why the Federal Republic of Nigeria took this important decision, and what the next steps will be for the implementation of the Kampala Declaration? Allow me to say you have 6 minutes, madam. Thank you so much. The floor is yours. I think she's not online any longer. Director Abiola. No.
I can see her. She just has to, sorry for interrupting. Dr. Abiola, would you mind just unmuting yourself?
Sure.
And if any administrator also can support in unmute Dr. Abiola?
Good morning, everybody.
Oh, yes.
I'm grateful for the honor to be part of this panel. I'm also thankful for the organizers of this event, Honorable Minister Sir, esteemed participants of this program, Chief of Mission, and all those present. Thank you, Frank, for this meeting. Yes, Nigeria signed on to the Kampala Declaration on Migration and Environment and Climate Change. This is very significant for the country, as you're all aware, that Nigeria has, as a big nation, has been under the effects of climate change, and climate change induced security issues are also playing out. You know, the Lake Chad and all the loss of biodiversity in the Lake Chad is resulting to huge issues around loss of biodiversity, economic issues, the limited resources for livelihood there that is causing so much competition and resulting in security issues, migration, and all of that. So it becomes very important for us, Nigeria, to have a declaration like this that will support government's efforts, developing a framework that provide best practice collaboration, also provide exchange of information in the region to tackle climate-related issues and migration. This is huge for us, and we look forward to ensuring that the best of the content of this declaration would be very beneficial to implementing policies, strategies, actions that would support economic, environmental and social development for Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you, Director, for this very interesting and brief intervention on the experience of Nigeria, and also some challenges as well that you mentioned. I mean, limited resources, the security issues, the limited livelihood opportunities for the concerned populations are key things, but also while at the same time highlighting all the government's efforts to support the implementation of the Kampala Declaration, and also at a larger scale, I like the idea of the exchange of information. So I think this is definitely something we should bear into consideration in the implementation of the Kampala Declaration. Thank you so much, Director, for your intervention. I will now move on to Ms. Nadia from Accra, Ghana. We listen now to the Director and more of the perception of the government and the importance of the implementation of the Kampala Declaration. But you, Ms. Nadia, as a representative of the youth, could you please elaborate or highlight what role the youth plays with regards to supporting governments in the implementation of the Kampala Declaration? Ms. Nadia, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really humbled to be here joining the discussions on climate mobility in the context of climate change. I'm excited to be part of the youth voices that have added on to the formulation and the development of the expansion of the Kampala Declaration. So for us as youth, we're happy to know that the government is not just involved, but are actively involved in ensuring that the Kampala Declaration is implemented, not just implemented, but implemented effectively. So for us as youth, we joined the development of the Kampala Declaration right in August, when young people were convened by IOM to have our key messages suggested into the expansion document. For us, we came to put together youth statements that were basically under the core thematic area of the urgent need for collaborative action to access the complex intersection of climate change and migration. We had our key messages in the area of human mobility as an adaptation strategy. We had our interventions on youth inclusion in decision-making, climate finance access, stakeholder collaborations and community resilience building, data and research integration, and legal frameworks for climate migrants. For us, what was the key highlight for us was when we joined the pre-climate summit technical conference on the Kampala expansion declaration with technical committee members, members of government, members of the Environmental Protection Agency at a high-level meeting to deliberate and also be part of high-level discussions on how we can feed our messages into the expansion of the Kampala Declaration. Together with other youth representatives, I represented the Central and Western Africa youth delegates. I had my colleagues, Rose Kapuzinji, Laura Kivuyo, and Hatim Aznagi join on different levels to put our key messages into the final documents. For us, what we were happy to achieve at the end of the day was we had 3 messages that were put into the final document, and they highlighted eliminating barriers to access to finance, economic safety nets, climate education, and including leveraging cutting-edge technology in the climate education processes. So for us youth, we are very much committed to advancing the Kampala Declaration with a multifaceted approach. We want to make sure that no one is left behind when it comes to youth, women, and girls. We want to push for a more multifaceted approach where we pledge as young people, we don't just want to be spectators, we want to be active participants, active collaborators, and active partners with IOM, with the government, and with all other stakeholders. We have pledged to raise awareness on knowledge about climate change and migration nexus through collaborations. We are going to do this because we feel that we as young people, we're more innovative, we're more smart, we're more, consented when it comes to the environment. So for us, this year, there are more youth convenings on the COP28 that is coming up. And for us youth, we are convening local chapters, we are convening regional chapters that are also called the LCOIs and the Conference of Youth leading to COP28. So for us, we have planned to raise awareness through these conferences to push for more education on climate change and migration affairs. We have also committed to push our efforts to including and boosting community resilience, supporting migrants and internal displaced persons, and promoting climate mobility literacy. For us, we believe partnerships are very integral when it comes to collaborations and working together with hand in hand with other ministers, government agencies, and also IOM. So for us, we are readily available to be open to partnerships with various stakeholders that will be fostered for the provision of environmental initiatives where young people and government stakeholders will work together to push for more environmentally friendly climate initiatives. We also pledge, which is very important to us, that as we've mentioned our key statements, as we've mentioned what we are really most important about, we wouldn't let that go away behind, but we also pledge to monitor and evaluate government policies on migration and climate change, because these are key. And for us as advocating for an inclusive labor policies for climate migrants. And also our focus will basically be on young people, women and girls. For us, our commitment and our dedication as youth stem from our shared identity as an African youth. We believe that for us, we want one Africa, and we're going to be pushing for all of these through our LCOIs, COI 18, all over to COP and other global undertakings. Personally, for myself, I'm championing this greatly in Ghana while I work with IOM in Ghana, youth advocates in Ghana, the National Youth Authority, the Environmental Protection Agency, our Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation. For us, we believe our commitment will persist as we work toward contributing to the implementation of the Africa we want to achieve the Agenda 2063. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nadia, to really share your quite active and personal experience when you could deliberate and make sure that the three messages were well integrated into the Kampala Declaration. That is very promising to see that your voice was heard and that you had an active role to play in Kenya in the pledge to the nexus of migration and climate change. I also loved your ideas of evaluating the policies. I think evaluation is also key. So that is definitely a good, a very important point. And of course, for all of us, I mean, the leave no one behind philosophy, let's call it, is also key. So I think, as you clearly pointed out, the role of the youth should also be bearing that into consideration. And whilst, of course, the overall idea of having a voice as one Africa is also a very noble cause. and quite well to the point in that regard. So thanks, Ms. Nadia, for highlighting this personal experience of your active participation in Nairobi and the actual outcome as well. So that is great to see. Thanks for that. I still do not see the participant from Uganda. So probably at this stage, let us move on to the questions of these first panelists. Let's give him another 5 or 10 minutes and see if he can still join online. But at this stage, I would ask if there are any questions to the director of Nigeria or Ms. Nadia from Ghana. Please raise your hands or write it in the chat. Thank you.
Christos, in the chat, we have a question for Sierra Leone. Maybe you could handle it, if it's okay for you. It's in the chat. Christos, you are free.
Yes, I'm reading through it. Okay, I can. I can revert back to that question. I see that Doctor is raised her hand. Doctor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And like I said, I really appreciate this forum. And Nigeria is looking forward to us hitting the ground running with the implementation that will come out of this declaration. The issues around climate-induced migration does not just center on the issue of the Chad. We have flooding in the south. We have the issues of coastal erosion, droughts. All of this induce various issues that threaten sustainable development. And for us in Nigeria, like I also mentioned, forward to items that will come out of this declaration to support government's initiative that is already ongoing and enable urgent actions to be taken to accelerate sustainable development. So recommendations here are strategies that would come out of this house, strategies that will come out of this to develop climate resilient structures, early warning system, coastal protection, agricultural innovation, urban planning, community empowerment, data and research. All of this, we look forward to a structure that would enable best practices, exchange of best practices around the region to enable policy integration that would come out of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director, for highlighting these important points with regards to the importance of having strategies in place, the data research, and also the early warning, urban planning, and community work at large. So yes, indeed, very important points. Let us see if there is another question in the chat. Otherwise, I can respond to the ones for Sierra Leone.
Yes, for Sierra Leone, Christos, Domingos is asking about the challenges and the projects and programs that are in place in Sierra Leone. He also would like to know what is the technological initiative to facilitate the resilient development of local communities. The other intervention from Astrid, I think, was addressed by Nadia, because she's talking about the recommendation issued from the Forum Continental, Youth Forum Continental, from the 15th to 18th of August in Nairobi. Over. These are the two interventions we have in the chat.
Great. Thank you so much for the question on Sierra Leone. Well, as you know, I'm not representing the government of Sierra Leone. But I will forward your question also to the Honorable Minister and his team. Now, from IOM Sierra Leone's point of view, what we do, we are trying to really put in practice a first climate change and migration pilot projects on 2 fishing islands. When I say fishing islands, I mean 2 islands next to Freetown that are very prone to relocation of vulnerable fishing communities who will need, because of the climate change situation and the literal disappearance of these islands, they will need to be relocated potentially. So we are working very closely with the government on the resilience side and on a data and academic project to really understand the causes of what is going on these 2 islands and the impact it has on the vulnerable fishing communities that do live on these islands. So this is one of the precise examples I can highlight that we put in place as IOM with the government of Sierra Leone. The minister was mentioning this pilot project. So we are very proud because it's the first migration and human mobility project in Sierra Leone with IOM and the government. Now the government on the other side, let me also tell you that there is a dedicated national disaster management agency in Sierra Leone, works very closely with the recently created Minister of Environment and Climate Change. This ministry was only created 2 years back in Sierra Leone. So it also shows you that the government at the highest level is committed to the cause of environment and climate change. So as I said, this is the newest ministry in Sierra Leone. The minister was recently appointed and has a very small team to really start more and more working on these issues. But outside of the government, I mean, outside of the ministry itself, sorry, there are 2 related agencies that do work on these questions. One is the Environment Protection Agency that relates to the Ministry of Environment, and the other one is the National Disaster Agency that do works a lot on the resilience side and on support to vulnerable communities in Sierra Leone, and also to the active response of natural hazards. That would be my response to the question on Sierra Leone, but I would also allow me also to forward your question to the Honorable Minister, should he wish with his team to get back to us with his official statement. Is there at this stage any other? Yes?
Yes, Christos, we have an hand. It's Sophia still. Sophia.
Yes, Ms. Sophia, the floor is yours.
So Sophia is not responding, but we also have another hand. It's Hadim Boop from Swiss Corporation. Hadim, are you with us? I have no feedback, but when we come back to yes.
I know. I'm just like Khadim's Mr. Khadim's mic is unmuted. Can you ask your question? No, now it's muted. Please, colleagues from the IT, can you please unmute Mr. Khadim so that he can ask his question?
Christos, I will come back in the chat. There is a very interesting point of view here from Camille. Camille is wondering about the signature of the KDMECC, and she's asking if it will also provide incentive to governments in the region to increase regional cooperation and response on these issues. And she also asks if ECOWAS, for instance, could play a stronger role in triggering collaboration on those challenges, opportunities. It's about the cross-border point of view. Christos?
Yes, thank you so much. I just saw the question. Can I direct this to our director from Nigeria? Because this is more, I mean, if you don't mind, director, I think this is a very relevant point on the cross-regional dynamics, in particular ECOWAS. And since Nigeria is a very active member state, probably I could direct this question to you, Madam Director.
What's the question again? Yeah. Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I understand. I see the question, but I want to understand the question again because I'm having difficulties reading the question. What's the question again, please?
It's to increase the regional cooperation and respond on the issues following the signature of the Kampala Declaration, and if ECOWAS could play a stronger role in triggering these collaboration.
Yeah, I don't work with ECOWAS, but I can speak from the angle for which we have had some collaborations with ECOWAS to implement structures, declarations like this for national and regional actions. I believe that ECOWAS will play a very strong role with this, and this should be shared with ECOWAS for a structure, a regional structure in the ECOWAS community or the ECOWAS structure also, where a framework developed in line with this that will cascade nationally to individual countries, also regionally. ECOWAS will play a very strong role in ensuring the implementation content of this declaration. So we need to reach out to ECOWAS, the necessary framework for the implementation of this in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director. Yes, indeed. So I think we all agree that at the regional level, ECOWAS in particular is key. I would probably also mention at the sub-regional level, for example, Mano River Union states, that could also be a very relevant point to raise amongst also the sub-regional level, and not only at the regional, such as the regional instances, such as ECOWAS. So thanks for this point, Madame Camille. I saw there is a question raised in French to our director. I guess this was not answered. Or Hint, could you probably respond to the question raised by Netol Mai Hondum?
Yes, for sure. I mean, thank you so much, Christos, and thank you so much for the question. I just want to say that my colleagues from the IT, when someone asks, raise his or her hand to speak, we are unmuting your mic, but you have to unmute it from your side, so that we can try doing it. So the questions, I mean, I think that our speaker from Uganda, who has the experience of working in the expert working group of for the implementation of the Kampala Declaration, the regional version for the Eastern Africa would have been better placed than me to answer this question. But definitely, the objective is to implement, and also I think that I completely agree with you, Christos, on the fact that what Nadia said about monitoring and evaluation and having a multi-stakeholders approach to the implementation of Kampala Declaration is important. Our colleagues from the Eastern and Eastern Horn of Africa have now a 12-month experience on the implementation of the Kampala Declaration, and we know that the expert working group is very important for the implementation. So yeah, I mean, that's the first answer, and I hope that our panelists from Uganda will be able to answer those questions too. Regarding the role of ECOWAS, definitely regional economic communities have been, I mean, involved in the formulation of the Kampala Declaration, and ECOWAS was among them, and definitely it's extremely important. I just would like to highlight the fact that in July 2022, ECOWAS signed its first climate strategy, and human mobility is within is mainstreamed in the climate strategy, and we do salute this this vision from ECOWAS to really have a people-centered approach to climate policies, and it's a very good step. And I think that with this strength of like being very clear on the fact that climate change has, exactly as Honorable Minister said just before, climate change is about human lives, it's about human realities, and I think that definitely we have a regional economic community who understands very much and wants to understand the fact that like policy dialogue is extremely important. We are talking about the dialogue between policy makers and the civil society, but it's very important also that we have this intra-sectoral policy dialogue to be able to have people-centered policies. Thank you so much. I hope that we will manage to hear our participants. I see that we have a hand raised here.
Ian, I'm not seeing the hand. Maybe you should introduce
Mr. Diago Janjai. We have also Mr. Bakari Jane, who have their hands raised. Please, dear speakers, dear participants, please unmute yourself when you want to speak, and we are unmuting also from our side. Maybe we can try. Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Jai, over to you, sir. You have your hand raised.
Ndiaye ou Dieng, je ne sais pas, est-ce que c'est moi?
Oui, c'est bien vous, monsieur. Bonjour.
Ok, donc c'est monsieur Dieng, ouais. Ok, merci beaucoup. Donc, nous nous réjouissons de cette opportunité d'échanger sur une question vraiment à l'ordre du jour au niveau international. Je ne sais pas, tout le monde est au courant des vagues de pirogues et de mouvements de l'Afrique de l'Ouest vers l'Europe pour vraiment, je ne sais pas, trouver des lendemains beaucoup plus importants. Et ça affecte beaucoup plus les jeunes et les femmes. Et ce qu'on constate au niveau de la CEDEAO, nous, au niveau du réseau Paix et Sécurité pour les femmes de l'espace CEDEAO, qui est un réseau qui travaille sur les 15 pays de la CEDEAO, et qui est vraiment un réseau qui fait la promotion et le leadership des femmes dans les questions de paix et de sécurité. Mais la question migratoire est devenue maintenant un problème très complexe et qui a des connotations sécuritaires. C'est vrai qu'il y a les difficultés renforcées par les changements climatiques, mais ce que nous avons constaté, il n'y a pas une politique pratiquement globale au niveau régional. Et également, au niveau de certains pays, il n'y a pas de stratégie migratoire. Et ce qu'on constate, des stratégies nationales de politique de migration, ce qu'on constate, bon, le Sénégal l'a validé récemment. Ce qu'on constate également, c'est que cette migration, elle est interne au niveau de la sous-région. Elle est beaucoup plus importante au niveau interne. Et nous avons des questions liées à la sécurité qui se posent et la mobilité des populations relativement à l'insécurité. Ça, c'est des défis qui sont en train de se poser. Et nous n'avons pas jusqu'ici au niveau régional des mécanismes de prévention et de gestion de ces conflits. La déclaration de Kampala, c'est un outil, un instrument méconnu par la plupart des acteurs de la société civile et des acteurs pratiquement qui sont dans le secteur de la migration. Et je pense que nous, en tant que réseau sous-régional, nous serons prêts vraiment à travailler dans la vulgarisation de cet outil et pour mieux le faire connaître et également amener les gens à aller dans une dynamique d'ensemble, d'harmonisation des interventions sur les questions migratoires. C'est vrai qu'il y a d'autres actions, peut-être qu'on pourrait relater, mais je pourrais peut-être dans un premier temps m'arrêter à ce niveau et vous remercier pour l'opportunité d'avoir échangé avec les experts et les responsables de l'OIM sur la question. Merci beaucoup. Et les acteurs de la société civile au niveau international. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Ndiaye. Allow me to briefly recapitulate what you just said in English. I know there is translation, but I think some points were very relevant. So you do represent a network working closely with ECOWAS. Mr. Jai highlighted the realities of irregular migration and all the challenges that goes with it. He also said that often it's irregular migration correlates with security concerns. He also mentioned the lack of regional strategies, or even more precisely, migration strategies at large, which do not facilitate the work, let's say. And also he wished that there would be more prevention mechanisms within the region. And also, as a last point, a very important one, I think, that we should all bear into consideration is the lack of knowledge of the Kampala Declaration, in particular of the civil society actors. So thank you, Mr. Ndiaye, for these very interesting points. I see there is another speaker, Mr. Bakari. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for giving me the floor to be part of you today to discuss issues regarding migration and climate change. It's obvious that it is a thing that has been a talk of the topic for quite a long time, but also looking at the strategies that have been put in place. For the fact that many are not aware of the Kampala Declaration, but you also come to realize that those that understand the Kampala Declaration are not putting it into consideration much. Many of the governments are not putting it into consideration. Talking about ECOWAS, looking at it, there are a lot of youths migrating from the sub-region using the Sahara Desert to the Mediterranean Sea, trying to reach Europe. Looking at that, you come to know that all these people are coming from countries. So in order to put an end to irregular migration, I think all governments have to work together to ensure that they have put an end to irregular migration. But like if governments are not putting this into consideration, it's really going to be an issue that we are going to talk about, over and over, and it will not yield any fruit. I work with an environmental organization called the Youths Against Environmental Degradation. But like illegal migration is also part of our issue, some of our agendas that we discuss frequent time. So to put an end to illegal migration, all what we need is all government, all hands must be on deck. It should not just only be talk. What should be now is government to put force. They should come up with actions and so that they have put an end to irregular migration. But other than that, we can only talk about illegal migration. It will not stop people from going. And the other thing also is, if you want to put an end to irregular migration, you have to look at the things that are the possible causes of irregular migration. Yes, climate change is a factor there, but if you come to think of it in deep, you come to realize that climate change in my country, per se, is a very little factor with regards to climate change. I'm from Gambia. Like, if you look at it, climate change in the Gambia here, people are not much considered with climate change as a factor of irregular migration. What most of the people are talking about is that there is youth unemployment, and very few of the population are into agriculture. Majority of us are talking about youth and unemployment. The government is not providing much needed facilities for the youths to be employed. This will eventually force youths to go on to illegal migration. And nowadays it is very, children of like 15 teenagers are the ones venturing into irregular migration. And most of them, they don't survive the journey, which is very sad. I think those are things that we need to put into consideration when we are talking about irregular migration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bakari, for this second point on the importance of irregular migration. Allow me, sir, just to add that I think we can all agree that to end irregular migration is almost impossible. What we can all do and what we should all do is to enhance regular pathways for migration, and also to, as the previous speaker was saying, Mr. Ndiaye, to say also to work together on the preventions of irregular migration. I also like to point, sir, of the whole of government approach. Probably we can agree on the whole of society approach to curb and further discuss on the realities of irregular migration at large. Thank you for this point. I see there are other speakers. So Mr. Bakary Diané, over to you.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, monsieur. La parole est à vous. Allez-y. On ne vous entend pas, monsieur. We can't hear you.
Okay, Christophe, while waiting for Mr. Bakary, we have in the chat few points.
Sure.
Sure, yes. The first point is regarding DRC. There is an intervention from DRC, and they would be interested to know if there are experience to be shared on how to put in place the interministerial sessions in their country. I think that this is a good one. And we also have an intervention from Patrick. I think that Patrick is from Ghana, because he is very excited to share that he is very excited that their voice was heard as youth, and this was very well conveyed by Nadia, and I wanted to share this. I think that it's very important to come through and play football. And then we also have this question addressed to IOM. The question from Dauda: have any intentions to provide support to African youth participation in COI 18 and COP28, emphasizing on the dissemination of the KDMECC youth key messages, as emphasized by Nadia earlier. Over, Christos.
Thank you. Let us first do, and then we will get back to the questions of the chat. We still have 20 minutes, I think. Mr. Boudal. No, he's offline. Okay. Mrs. Astrid Ovono, over to you before we go to the questions of the chat. Ms. Astrid Ovono, over to you, madam. Mrs. Astrid Ovono, you have the floor. Ah, yes,
OK.
great.
Bonjour,
yes,
bonjour à tous. Oui, bonjour à tous. Je suis Astrid Ovono. Je suis parmi les 70 jeunes qui avaient participé au Forum continental sur la mobilité humaine dans un contexte de changement climatique à Nairobi. Je suis de nationalité gabonaise. Alors, moi, j'ai par contre une préoccupation. Quand je regarde, je suis quand même une jeune dame leader depuis longtemps dans les questions climatiques au niveau de mon pays, mais j'ai presque jamais entendu des débats concernant la mobilité humaine et les changements climatiques. Alors, comment moi, à mon niveau, je peux vraiment emmener nos autorités locales à mettre en œuvre ou à la mobilité, les questions liées à la mobilité humaine dans un contexte de changement climatique, quand nous savons que la quasi-totalité des villes du Gabon sont sujettes aux grandes crises d'inondation et à des forts déplacements de population d'une région à une autre. Et aujourd'hui, on sait que ces déplacements de population vont créer certainement des conflits, peut-être pas aujourd'hui, mais dans l'avenir, ils pourront être à l'origine des conflits territoriaux. Et nous savons aussi que les personnes qui quittent leur lieu de résidence pour une autre zone vivent beaucoup de pertes. Et comment moi je vais pouvoir implémenter ce concept quand bien même je suis aujourd'hui, j'ai presque jamais été en collaboration avec l'OIM Gabon. Je ne sais même pas s'il y a une représentation au Gabon, parce que jusque-là, je cherche. Et lorsqu'on est rentré du forum, je me suis bien dit, il faut bien qu'on en parle, il faut que les jeunes abordent cette thématique-là, parce que nous, on est seulement dans les questions d'adaptation, de résilience, mais on n'a pas encore abordé clairement, même lorsque j'assiste aux conférences de nos aînés qui sont dans le domaine climatique depuis, j'ai vraiment pas encore entendu la question de mobilité humaine dans les débats centraux au Gabon. Donc, moi, j'aimerais avoir une méthodologie ou une approche pour pouvoir impliquer un maximum de jeunes ou encore plus, même pourquoi pas inspirer nos aînés dans cette thématique qu'on aborde aujourd'hui. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, madame. Je vais reprendre en anglais, hein, si vous permettez. Madame Ovono from Gabon mentioned a very similar point to the two previous speakers. So one is the lack of knowledge of the Kampala Declaration, especially for civil society actors. And second is how to enhance the collaboration between government actors and civil society actors with regards to the implementation of the Kampala Declaration. So I think these are very valid points. Thank you so much for highlighting this. Allow me also on this, another point you highlighted, we do have a colleague based in Libreville as IOM. So it is one colleague, but at least we do have a presence in Gabon. So I'm sure our regional office in Dakar remains at your disposal to further discuss your specific questions with regards to IOM in Gabon. Thank you so much for that. Let us now at this stage go back, because we have to also be considerate of the time, on the questions raised online. So I see that there was this point raised by the Democratic Republic of Congo. Probably we could give them the floor at this stage. J'aimerais bien donner la parole au représentant de la RDC, s'il vous plaît. Monsieur le directeur, s'il vous plaît, vous avez la parole. Merci. Monsieur David Lelou, pardon, coordinateur du cabinet d'études de la RDC. Okay, he doesn't seem to be online. Fine.
Christos?
Yes.
Okay, we also have a question online. I think that this one works as well. Is how can social inclusion?
Yes, okay. He's online. Allez-y, s'il vous plaît.
Merci pour la parole. Monsieur David Lelou, coordinateur du cabinet d'études et d'exécution de projets. Alors, j'ai posé la question relative aux expériences, s'il existe dans d'autres pays, sur la mise en œuvre de l'accord de Kampala en ce qui concerne le groupe de travail thématique. Parce que dans notre pays en particulier, il y a plusieurs acteurs qui interviennent sur les questions climatiques et environnementales, mais aussi sur les questions de la migration. Toutefois, aucun de ces acteurs, ou plutôt, on assiste à un travail séparé. Chaque acteur travaille de son côté et il n'y a aucune coordination des acteurs. Au point que hier, par exemple, j'ai été au ministère des Affaires étrangères pour m'enquérir de l'évolution de la mise en œuvre de l'accord de Kampala, au ministère de l'Intérieur qui a représenté la RDC à la signature de cet accord. Aucune personne n'a pu m'informer sur l'évolution de la mise en œuvre de cet accord. Pourtant, la semaine passée, le mardi, nous avons assisté au lancement d'une étude par un autre acteur gouvernemental de l'étude sur les mouvements des personnes et les climats. Alors, ceci suscite une question, comment faire, ou s'il y a déjà des exemples, pour arriver à mettre ensemble les acteurs. Nous, en tant qu'acteurs de la société civile, nous avons sollicité du gouvernement d'organiser des journées de réflexion pour amener à mettre ensemble ces groupes de travail. Est-ce que c'est une bonne approche peut-être que vous allez nous informer là-dessus. J'ajoute en même temps sur je rejoins la préoccupation de l'intervenant du Gabon pour dire aussi en RDC, la migration n'est pas vraiment liée au climat sur le plan des faits. Les causes de migration sont plus pauvreté, chômage, insécurité. Alors, il se révèle là qu'il y a urgence, soit avec l'OIM, soit avec les autres acteurs, d'organiser le renforcement de capacités, forme d'ateliers, pour vulgariser ces notions, afin que chaque acteur arrive à mettre un lien entre le mouvement des personnes et le changement climatique. Voilà un peu préoccupation. Quel est le rôle de l'OIM là-dessus? Est-ce qu'on peut travailler avec l'OIM sur ces sujets? Parce que c'est vrai que je suis un ancien de l'OIM, mais depuis un temps, bon, je travaille un peu dans le cadre de la société civile. Est-ce que d'actualité, on peut le faire? Comment on peut le faire? Voilà un peu ma préoccupation. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur Lelou. Thank you so much for your very relevant point, which are again quite similar to the previous intervention. So there seems to be several countries or representatives or interventions do agree that there is a certain lack of coordination between government and civil society actors. The question Mr. Lelou raised concerned also the capacity building to actually popularize also the Kampala Declaration and its implementation, but also the nexus of human mobility and climate change at large, and to what extent they can or actors can collaborate with IOM. Allow me already to tell you that definitely you can and you should work with IOM. I think we all agree on that. And second, on the coordination aspect, this is now a point that was raised on with several stakeholders. So probably this is also something that we should take up as one of the key recommendations of this panel. I wished, Mr. Lelou, you also asked about the experience of the technical working groups. Uganda is, of course, a very active member state. And I was told our third panelist would have joined. Unfortunately, he's not yet online. So at this stage, probably.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Alicia Kiza is the name Alicia Kiza. So you can ask them to switch on their cameras and their mics.
Sorry, Hint, say again.
Yeah, it's the panelist is under the name of another colleague, Alicia Kiza. So please invite them to switch on their cameras and microphones.
Sure. So please, the representative of Uganda was supposed to replace the representative from the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Uganda.
Mr. Benan Kayemba.
The floor is yours.
Mr. Benan Kayemba, Mr. Kayemba, are you here? I know that you're telling me that you're here on WhatsApp, but would be great if we could see you here on the. If you can switch on.
I don't see him here.
I mean, he's confirming.
Can I proceed? Are you able to hear me?
Welcome. Yeah, we would love to see you too.
Okay. Let me try the video whether I can be seen.
That's great.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kayemba. We're very glad to have you.
Sorry, we have network problems, but I hope you are able to hear.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, sir, and welcome. Allow me very briefly to present you to everyone. Excuse me, Mr. Kayemba. Yes, thank you. So Mr. Kayemba is the head of the Department of Consular Services of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in charge of migration programs in Uganda. And he previously acted 3 times as Deputy Ambassador in Algiers, in Kinshasa, and also he was the IGAT coordinator for Uganda. So thanks for being with us, sir. And several stakeholders or panel or interventions were asking us about the experience of Uganda in particular in the technical expert groups. So probably you could highlight a bit and share the experience of the Republic of Uganda that brought the Kampala Declaration. So over to you, Mr. Kayemba. Thanks for being with us.
Yes, thank you, moderator. I hope you've been already briefed on the processes so far undertaken under the Kampala Declaration and the recent meeting in Nairobi, where an addendum was adopted to expand the membership of the declaration to include all countries in Africa. We had fruitful discussions in Nairobi, and we had a number of undertakings and a program of action. And basically, if I can make a small recall, in July last year, the Uganda government with other 15 countries and in partnership with IOM adopted the Kampala Declaration, Ministerial Declaration, to provide a regional framework to comprehensively address the issue of climate change and human mobility. And since its signing, there have been interest from other African countries to also contribute to the Kampala Declaration through the continental expansion. And in June, the UNFCCC intersectional meeting in Bonn, the government of Uganda, in collaboration with IOM, presented the declaration. Presented the proposals of the continental expansion of the declaration to both the Africa Group of Negotiators and the Least Developed Countries Group, LDC Group. Both groups demonstrated a strong interest in expanding the Kampala Declaration continentally. Now the government of Uganda and the government of Kenya are inviting the continent to join their effort to join these efforts on expanding the declaration and embrace the addendum and have it signed by all the countries participated in the meeting in Nairobi. So we needed a deliberate effort in order to achieve this target. Therefore, we are of the view that we need to set up technical working groups to address technical inputs into the continental expansion. We also need to gather preliminary inputs from African states to the addendum to facilitate the development to facilitate its later development into a plenary sitting at a technical conference of states in a later date. So we think that we need to undertake a study on the potential financing to support the implementation of the declaration. We also need a platform at the African Climate Summit. And actually, we had a platform at the African Climate Summit, which helped us to have this declaration, the addendum adopted. But now we think that at any subsequent meeting, maybe the one being organized in November, I think, is it November or December? So that we have the declaration and the addendum signed by the continent, by all other member states in the continent. Currently, we have about 30 member states which have not signed the declaration, but they were in attendance in Nairobi. And we think that they should be reminded so that they can come on board and have the declaration signed. we will be distributing letters from our minister in charge of environment to member states to remind them of the need to have the declaration signed. But we also need the African Union Commission to support these efforts. We don't know whether it will be necessary to have a dialogue between the government of Uganda, government of Kenya, IOM, and AU Commission, so that we can chart a way forward on how we can fast track the signature and the implementation of the declaration. You should remember that this declaration has 12 key commitments made by different countries. So for now, I think that's what I can say, unless if there's any other question to clarify or to be clarified on. I thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for this very important point at this stage. Of course, we all need to learn from the rich Ugandan experience and commitment to the Kampala Declaration. So I think that comes very timely, your intervention, and thank you for that. For also, I like the idea of this study to really properly understand the funding mechanisms that we should have in place, but also, I mean, the need for further coordination as well. And thank you as well for highlighting that your Minister of Environment will liaise with his fellow colleagues within the African continent to make sure that the remaining African nations who did not yet sign the Kampala Declaration will hopefully consider signing it as well very soon. Thank you for that experience sharing, sir. We are unfortunately almost coming to an end. I see in the chat, there is one question to Miss Nadia. Let me see the name of the person.
Mr. Sebastian Ouedraogo.
Yes, yes, exactly, from Burkina Faso. Monsieur Ouedraogo, la parole est à vous, si vous le souhaitez. OK. OK. So,
je peux...
Oui,
oui, juste parce que je vais parler en français. J'ai vu beaucoup de... Merci beaucoup à Monsieur Kayemba pour partager son expérience qui est très, très importante. Mais aussi, il y a beaucoup de... En tout cas, on le sent et je peux vous assurer que dans le chat WhatsApp des jeunes qui ont participé justement aux ateliers de Nairobi cet été, il y a beaucoup de dynamisme et d'excitation autour de cette question-là et on est vraiment très heureux de voir tout cet enthousiasme. Comme il y a beaucoup de questions de la jeunesse et pour l'engagement de la jeunesse, notamment dans la perspective de la participation à la COP28, j'ai partagé dans le chat une initiative qui est menée sous le pavillon de la mobilité climatique au niveau de la COP28, auquel l'OIM est une des parties prenantes. Donc, il y a un appel à manifestation d'intérêt. Donc, on vous encourage. J'ai partagé le lien. J'ai aussi partagé dans le chat, j'ai aussi partagé nos mails respectifs. Je travaille avec une jeune collègue qui est une extraordinaire jeune collègue qui s'appelle Madame Amina Tanyan, qui suit toute cette question sur la jeunesse. Donc, on est là pour vous guider autant que faire se peut pour pouvoir vous engager sur ces questions-là. Bien évidemment, ça demande beaucoup de ressources aussi. On ne pourra pas répondre positivement à toutes les sollicitations, mais en tout cas, on prend bien note et on a bien conscience de l'importance de l'engagement de la jeunesse et on est à votre disposition si vous avez des questions, des suggestions, etc. Et encore un grand merci à Nadia pour son leadership sur la question. Merci beaucoup.
Yes, thanks so much, Lynn, for again highlighting the importance of the youth and the participation. So my colleague Kim shared in the chat, as she was saying, some relevant links for call for proposals for the youth. That is great. I still see we have 3 minutes left for this panel, literally. I see 3 hands up. So Madame Astrid, that I think is remaining from the previous question. So probably we can take a very last question for Mr. Hamza Tijani. So Mr. Tijani, the floor is yours, and you might be the last speaker for today, for this panel. Thank you.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Bonjour à tous. Je suis Hamza Tidjani, citoyen de la République centrafricaine, et je tiens à exprimer ma gratitude pour cette opportunité de m'adresser à vous. Je tiens à rappeler que je faisais partie des 70 jeunes qui ont activement participé au Forum de la jeunesse africaine sur la mobilité humaine dans le contexte du changement climatique à Nairobi en août 2023. Donc, au cours de nos échanges actuels, j'ai constaté que les questions liées à la migration, notamment la déclaration de Kampala, sont principalement centrées sur les régions d'Afrique, certainement. Et je m'interroge sur la situation de l'Afrique centrale. Ainsi, je souhaite connaître l'état d'avancement de la mise en œuvre de la déclaration de Kampala dans la sous-région de l'Afrique centrale. Et merci d'avance pour vos réponses.
Merci, Monsieur Tidjani. Est-ce que votre question est adressée à qui? Est-ce qu'elle est adressée à un des panélistes ou à l'OIM ou à... Merci de préciser.
Ok, ma question est adressée à l'OIM principalement et à tous les panélistes qui sont capables de me donner la suite à cette question.
D'accord.
Okay.
Merci, merci. Is there, following the question of Mr. Tidjani, is there any of the 3 esteemed panel members who would like to respond to it? Mr. Kayamba, I see you very closely. Do you want to respond to the question raised by Mr. Tidjani?
Yeah, it was in French. I couldn't
you did
get
not
the translation.
Sorry, okay, you did not switch on the translation service, no problem. Monsieur Tidjani, pourriez-vous s'il vous plaît nous redire la question très brièvement et je vais traduire pour nos panélistes. Désolé.
D'accord. Ok, bon, ma question est de savoir, durant nos échanges actuellement, j'ai constaté que les questions liées à la migration, notamment la déclaration de Kampala, sont principalement centrées sur certaines régions de l'Afrique. Je m'interroge sur la situation de l'Afrique centrale parce qu'au cours de ces échanges, on n'a pas abordé la situation de l'Afrique centrale. Donc, je souhaite connaître l'état d'avancement de la mise en œuvre de la déclaration de Kampala dans la région de l'Afrique centrale.
Merci. So Mr. Tidjani was asking, as per his understanding, the focus is not very much on Central Africa. So he was looking forward to receive some answers on where we currently stand with regards to the implementation of the Kampala Declaration in Central Africa specifically. Hint, could I probably ask you to give some elements of response to the question raised by Mr. Tidjani?
Of course. Thank you so much, Christos. So definitely the Central African Republic contributed to the different workshops, and including the technical workshop, which led to the formulation of the Kampala Declaration. Now I think that we are in the step of the signature from the government. Maybe as we speak, the declaration has been signed by the Central African Republic, but so far I'm not aware of it. But definitely, I mean, our colleagues are following up with with the right embassies. I just wanted to maybe just to highlight, there is a lot of impatience and expectations regarding this Kampala Declaration. It's great. I just want to highlight that we are in the first step and the political steps of, several countries already signed, but I mean, we are not here yet in terms of implementation. So here today, I mean, it's completely normal if no dialogue has been engaged in some countries on the Kampala Declaration, but definitely I think that this is exactly the reason why we have invited you today, is just to understand what are the needs, and what I hear here and that we can convey to respective governmental counterparts is that there is a need to communicate on the Kampala Declaration and also to gather the different stakeholders to think the implementation. It's an extremely participatory approach here, and we are at the very first stage. Thank you so much.
Yeah, actually, I can just add that Central Africa is among the countries which they are listed in the declaration.
Thank you, Mr. Koyamba, to clarify this. Monsieur Tijani, donc Monsieur le représentant de l'Ouganda a clarifié que la République centrafricaine Mr. Koyamba, we can't hear you. Sorry, yes, sir. We
yes,
lost
so
Mr.
if we
Koyamba.
can do anything to deliver the document, you can't. Are
no,
you
we
able to hear
lost
me?
you, sir. We lost you. Sorry,
No.
we only heard yes. So if you could briefly respond, thank you so much.
So I'm not audible. I'm not audible.
Now we can hear you. Yes, please proceed.
Okay, no, I was saying that Central Africa is one of the countries which hasn't signed, but it's listed actually as number 2, I think, on the declaration. And we hope that they'll be able to come on board and sign. And if they don't have the declaration, we'll do whatever we can to deliver the copy of the declaration for signing to them through the Ministry of Environment. And I actually just wanted to re-emphasize one point, that what would be the best mechanism of having the member states sign is when we get a platform. For example, in the COP28, if we can, some of our partners, IOM or and African Union, if they can organize a side event alongside the COP28 to have a signing ceremony, we can work together and prepare for that so that the documents are sent to member states, and we have that time, maybe a day or in the morning or afternoon before, so that we have other countries come and then sign. We have a list of the 30 countries who haven't signed. So I would really appeal to partners so that we can have this programmed. Maybe we can have a discussion with you, the moderator, IOM, and the commission, and maybe with other agencies to have this done. And then lastly, I think for now, we really need to popularize the declaration so that it goes beyond the member states. So we'll appeal that we can come up with publications in terms of brochures, and then they can be disseminated by civil society organizations, by other NGOs, so that it's known and the commitments are known, and then those NGOs can hold governments accountable to make sure that they meet the commitments they undertook. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Koyamba, on highlighting this. Monsieur Tijani, nous avons essayé, j'espère qu'il y a eu la traduction, Donc, comme ma collègue Madame Hint disait et Monsieur Koyamba de l'Ouganda aussi, la mise en œuvre de la déclaration de Kampala est un processus complexe et comme vient de le dire l'intervenant de l'Ouganda, on pourrait réfléchir à utiliser la COP28 comme plateforme pour faire en sorte que les États qui n'ont pas encore signé deviennent officiellement signataires de la Kampala Declaration. Mr. Koyamba, I just very briefly translated your very interesting ideas for the COP28 to Mr. Tijani, who raised this point on the Central African Republic. We are 5 minutes late. We are now at the crucial point of we need to take some decisions. Shall we? There is a very last point. So, Aro Dakar, can we still take one very, very last question, or do we really have to stick to the time management and stop the very interesting discussions here? Hint?
Yeah, my suggestion would be that we stick to the planning. So what makes the quality of the event too is that we stick to the plan, but definitely questions can be written in the chat, and also there will be a Q&A session just right after the second panel. So let's move on, I think.
Sure, thank you for clarifying. Our excuses then to Mr. Kofi. So please, Mr. Kofi, raise your question in the chat. So I will hereby close this first panel by thanking first and foremost Dr. Inobiang Abiola from Nigeria, but also Ms. Nadia Owuzu, our youth advocate from Accra, sharing a very interesting insights on the youth empowerment side, but also Mr. Kayamba, the acting ambassador from Uganda, for the very active info sharing on the commitment of the Republic of Uganda in promoting the Kampala Declaration. I think we had some very rich and very interesting discussions. Probably two very last points from my side before I conclude. I think there is a need to further disseminate the Kampala Declaration. That is definitely one key outcome. I think several stakeholders or panelists and interventions highlighted the need to further clarify IOM's stake into this discussion. So I think this is for us and Aro Dakar a clear follow-up that is needed. And also the whole of society and whole of government approach. I think these were also some very decisive points that were highlighted during this very interesting discussion. So let me end here by thanking you all once again for this first panel on these important discussions, and I hand over to our MC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christos. Thank you for this very high-level panel, very interesting. I also really enjoyed the panelists, so I thank them very much. And following your intervention, I just would like to say the key point on dissemination. I also saw on the chat Mama Jaha Job talking of the media's role, the key role they have to play in the dissemination of the strategies around the Kampala Declaration. I think it's a very good point. Now that these interventions have provoked thoughts, insights, and experience sharing, I would like to continue to introduce the next conversation of the panel 2. And this session titled Toward the Role of Society and Solution-Oriented Approach to Climate Mobility in Western Central Africa, Challenges and Opportunities. This panel will be moderated by our colleague, Mr. Manuel Marquez Pereira. He is the head of Migration, Environment, Climate Change, and Risk Reduction Division. Do you hear me?
Yes, Asisutu, I'm
yes,
here.
Very good. And as I was saying, he's the head of Migration, Environment, Climate Change, and Risk Reduction Division of the International Organization for Migration. Prior his current appointment, Manuel served as a Deputy Chief of Mission and Emergency Coordinator in Bangladesh from 2018 to 2021. There he led the IOM team that provided humanitarian assistance to refugees and host communities. Manuel has also worked with IOM Southern Africa, Iraq, Philippines, Pakistan, Timor-Leste. We are so proud of you, Manuel. Please, you have the floor, our expert.
Aissatou, thank you so much for this. And of course, it's a pleasure to be with all of you on this dialogue today, and especially on moderating this. I thank all the participants, the organizers, and all the people online that are listening to us. Thank you for joining us. And of course, I would invite you all to join our discussion at the end of the first part of the panel to make this more interactive. We really want to learn from you. IOM is at your service to bring this. Without further ado, I would like to say that this session will last around 1 hour and 10 minutes. This last session will have a short intervention by a panel of experts that you have seen here, and I will introduce very soon. And then we would like to invite all for questions and answers in 3 rounds so that we are able to exchange experiences and ideas. If you allow me, also, I would like to highlight that the aim of this session is to discuss ways in which to ensure that the formulation and implementation of the discussion solutions follows a whole of government and a whole of society approach. In this spirit, the panel can count on the intervention of these groups of experts from the private sector, international organizations, and civil society. And we would like to bring different perspectives to this conversation. So allow me to introduce to you our 3 panelists. I'll talk a bit more of them as we go along the panel. First, we have Mr. Mubarak Mukaila, is the project director of the West Africa Alliance on Carbon Markets and Climate Finance, linked to the West African Development Bank in Lome, Togo. Mr. Mubarak, a pleasure. I hope that you are online. Can we see you and join us, please?
Yes, I am here. I'm online. I'm here.
Hello, a pleasure seeing you, and thank you so much for being here. We will also have Mr. Blama Jallo, coordinator of Réseau Bilatéral Maroubé, the regional organization of pastoralists. Mr. Blama, are you online? Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Merci. And the last member of the panel is Ms. Nafisato Konate, CEO of NAM Energy from Burkina Faso. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Moving forward, I would think that we could go directly into the questions. I will make a question to each of the panel. They will talk for around 6 minutes, and when the 3 panelists have presented their points, we will open the floor for questions. Colleagues, as our panelists talk, please start putting your questions on the chat. We will have moderation that will allow your questions to be flagged. I will put the first question to Mr. Mubarak. Allow me to say that Mr. Mukaila is currently the project director of West Africa Alliance on Carbon Markets and Climate Finance. After being the regional lead of the Regional Collaboration Center for West and Central Africa, he has a master's in finance and economy from Boston University, Massachusetts, with more than 15 years experience in project development and financing. Sir, it's a pleasure having you with us. I would make a question to you for your points. That is, one of the main and most recurrent challenges that is mentioned when it comes to climate action is the limited access to funding, especially in West Africa. As a specialist of climate finance, how do you think collaboration can support tackling this issue in West Africa? And how can we get nature and community-based solutions financed at large scale? Sir, the word is yours.
Well, thank you very much for this question, and I thank the organizers to inviting me to this session. We had a very nice and fruitful session in Nairobi, and I think this is in line to have a larger crowd hearing this the same conversation that we had. And I think one of the key elements and one of the reasons why I appreciated the work that we've been doing with IOM is the importance of collaboration when looking at a variety of sources of funding out there. I always make the linkage with the COVID financing, where with the collaboration, with the international collaboration, we were able to mobilize within a very short period of time, billions and billions, more than what we have been mobilizing since this fight in the early 90s on climate change. And one of the reasons is not only the design and the structuring of the projects, but it's also the collaboration that lacks. And I think that's one of the key solutions that we can emphasize on. One of the key elements that also we also look at when developing projects is how we bring together all the different stakeholders to make the projects more attractive and to make the project more sustainable. One of the things that we looked into is how at the beginning, how at the structuring level of the projects, we can bring the stakeholders that can make the projects a lot more attractive and a lot more sustainable to attract different variety of sources of funding. And one of the things that we also make sure we work on is how we incorporate different lines of credits and different lines of each of sources of funding together around the table, so that when developing the project, we can have different aspects. You mentioned one of the things that is very important, and in my title, it mentioned really well the aspect of carbon markets and carbon finance. And that's one of the things that we believe can serve as concessional resources to come and enable the return rate on the investment to be higher and to be more attractive. We believe that today, to finance the gap of funding, both in climate finance and globally in the SDGs, we need a strong involvement of the private sector. And having the private sector around the table means that we will need to have projects that are more sustainable, that have a higher return rates on investment. And that's where we believe instruments like the carbon markets or biodiversity of nature-based solutions can come and serve as concessional additional resources to make those projects a lot more attractive. And that's one of the things that we are working on, putting together these instruments, going to the private markets, using additional resources to have longer return rates periods, and then lowering interest rates. And then I believe those are key elements that we can put around the table to make the projects more attractive. One of the things that we also push project developers, non-state actors when developing projects to do is to make sure that at the beginning of their projects, they look at variety of investment solution, variety of funders, to make sure that their eligibility criteria are incorporated in the project development at the early stage, so that it cuts on the delays, it cuts on the time that it takes for the project to be implemented, and so on and so forth. So that's one of the things that we are crucially working on, and we believe that with collaboration and with the strengthening of the issues like carbon markets and biodiversity, nature-based solutions and all, we can have a stronger and more available resources for financing and investing in projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mubarak. I will pass now, since we are on the framing, to our other panelists. If Mr. Blama would allow me, I would like to bring forward our colleague, Mr. Nafissatou, first, so that we don't let our female colleague be the last person to talk. I will take this liberty. Ms. Nafissatou, we will ask you to intervene next. Ms. Nafissatou Konate is an electrical engineer. She's the founder of NUM Energy and works with private enterprises, youth and women associations, smallholder farmers, and businesses and homes in collaboration with the 1 Billion Trees for Africa movement in fighting against deforestation and the production of electricity by taking advantage of the sunlight in the Sahel, creating jobs for women and youth, improving livelihoods, and enhancing climate adaptation while leveraging the opportunities of growing 1 billion trees for Africa in the achieving of the Great Wall, peace, security through social cohesion. Ma'am, a pleasure having you here. My question for you would be, from your experience, how can we ensure that the private sector is meaningfully and systematically engaged in West and Central Africa in the design and delivery of solutions that aim at preventing, reducing, and addressing loss and damage associated with the adverse effects of climate change? Ma'am, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello, good day, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for the here. So I have a couple of things. Can you hear me well?
There's a bit of flickering, ma'am. If you prefer to have more bandwidth to take the camera, I will also take mine.
Okay, I will switch off the camera then. Can you hear me better?
Much better, yes, indeed.
Right. So I have a couple of points. Sorry for the background noise. I have a couple of points that I would actually like to share with you. The private sector should be seen as a partner in the design and delivery solution in preventing and reducing loss and damages associated with the effect of climate change. They should be seen as a partner because we, as being active in the design, is actually more effective, and we actually create better solutions to tackle all of the issues of climate change. We can see that from everything that people have said before me, there's a definite discoordination between civil society actors, the state, and also private sectors. The private sector is also part of the problem, as we unfortunately do pollute a lot when it comes to big industries that not only cut down trees and pollute a lot, but we also greatly part of the solutions, because we design the solution to make sure that the pollution is cut down as much as possible. The third point that I actually want to make is that the private sector should be put ahead for all the policies discussed and implementation, because it's more effective the national and the international atmosphere that we have. It's more effective to be included in these discussions. Helps because while we're actually implementing all these policies that we have, if we're not there when they're discussed, we actually keep wasting time and money. So we want to be aligned with the approved policies. The fourth, can you still hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry.
No worries.
So private sector should also get investment from states and different banks, as we are actively fighting for climate change day in, day out. Personally, in our companies, we actually install solar panels for hospitals, primary cares, and more we have, because now we're talking about migration. As we all know, I am actually living in Burkina Faso. A lot of people are coming from the north to the south because of the terrorism that is still happening in the north. So there's more people, and the grid is stranded, the water is stranded. We actually have what we call load shedding. So we have a couple of people having different time for electricity per day. The primary center, sorry, I'm actually so stressed. The primary medical centers are also very stranded, as there is more people to take care of. So we actually make sure that we try to put as much solar panel on these public centers so that people can actually get better care. We also work a lot with rural areas so people can conserve their fruits and vegetables and corn that they grow once a year. we have to work with the state because the state is actually the entity that actually can upgrade, because the upgrade databases, and we actually have to put databases. We have to put up databases to make sure that we know what is happening. The number of solar panels going up, the numbers of trees that is going up, and the different states can work together as a region. And then we have these databases that are always upgraded so that when we can go to African Week, Climate Week, or COP, we actually have these databases to actually show our progress in the region and make sure that migration is taken into account with everything we do. I am going to finish by saying that before I actually went to Climate Week this year, I did not actually know that mobility was actually an issue, and I saw it every day. We have a lot of people, as I say, that come from the north to the south in Burkina Faso. And when these people come and don't act on it, it actually creates more climate change. They come down, they cut the trees to be able to cook their food and eat. And unfortunately, when it becomes that bad, you also have these people who are trying to now take themselves illegally to Europe. So climate change is definitely something that we have to keep fighting, and we need to work efficiently with the states and the region to make it better. Thank you very much.
Ms. Nafissatou, thank you so much for this. I would now turn to our last panelist, and my apologies for the change of the order again. Mr. Blamat Jallo. He is the coordinator of the Réseau Bilatéral Marobé, a regional organization of pastoralists. Mr. Blamat trained as a livestock engineer and has a rich experience in supporting pastoral organizations. He actively contributes to working with livestock breeders and their leaders to support the capacity building of pastoral organizations to meet the challenges of security, livestock mobility, and national and cross-border levels, to also develop technical and economical services for livestock farmers, and lead advocacy processes aimed at influencing public policies in a direction more favorable to livestock farming and pastoralism. Mr. Blamat, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you are still online. Do we have
Oui, bonjour tout le monde. Et
bonjour,
merci de me
bonjour.
donner la parole.
Oui, oui.
Vous m'entendez?
Oui, oui. Ma question pour vous. Based on your practices and experience, how can local indigenous knowledge play a role in communities' long-term adaptation to climate change? Can you share with us innovative community-centered practices and solutions to prevent, reduce, and address the adverse effects of climate change for local populations? Please, I think you are more comfortable in French, and my French is not very good, but proceed. The floor is yours, Mr. Blamat. Merci beaucoup. La parole, c'est pour vous.
Merci beaucoup de cette tribune qui m'est offerte pour partager un peu mon expérience au sein d'une organisation régionale qui est le RBM, qui est un réseau régional d'éleveurs qui couvre pratiquement 11 pays de la sous-région. Et de l'intervention de mes prédécesseurs, je voulais juste attirer l'attention qu'il y a un nouveau document, une publication qui a été faite au Sénégal, le fait que le bilan carbone et de l'élevage mobile tropical au Sahel, il est de 0. Et ce qui change un peu, je dirais, la perception et ce que nous avons comme préjugé par rapport à l'élevage et sa production en émissions de gaz, en effet de serre. Par contre, les financements verts sur les effets de mitigation se font attendre sur les questions de l'élevage. Par exemple, au niveau des pâturages qui peuvent être valorisés pour leur captation en COD. Bref, c'était juste une parenthèse par rapport à ça. Et par rapport à ce qui m'est demandé aujourd'hui, je voudrais juste souligner que pour les communautés pastorales dont je voudrais parler, l'élément important, c'est la mobilité. C'est la mobilité du bétail. Et cette mobilité du bétail, elle s'inscrit dans une logique de résilience climatique. De telle sorte que cette mobilité du bétail, elle permet d'ajuster la quantité d'animaux aux ressources fourragères disponibles pour les nourrir et contribuer à réduire les risques de dégradation du couvert végétal. Donc, cette mobilité, elle intervient dans des zones où nous avons, je dirais, un climat qui est très hostile, 300 mm d'eau par an, illégalement réparti et avec des effets de changement climatique. Le mot le plus important, c'est plutôt maintenant l'abondance ou, je dirais, les excès en termes de production d'eau, inégalement répartis dans le temps ou rarement, avec 300 mm d'eau au maximum. Donc, la mobilité est cette stratégie ou cette approche qui est développée par ces communautés pastorales pour faire face également à ces difficultés. Et cette mobilité, elle est, entre autres, le fruit d'un savoir-faire et d'un savoir qui est développé par ces communautés. Et dans ce savoir, il y a plusieurs types de stratégies. Mais toutes ces stratégies, d'abord, s'appuient sur des espèces locales qui sont rustiques et adaptées à l'aridité du milieu. Parmi les stratégies, nous avons une des stratégies la plus importante, c'est d'abord la gestion du troupeau. Et dans cette gestion du troupeau, qui intègre à la fois les jeunes et les anciens, nous avons ce que nous avons mis en place et nous disons ça très clairement, je l'appellerai sur le terme d'une sorte de déstockage stratégique. Vous avez, pendant des périodes de mobilité, un noyau du cheptel qui reste sur place pour profiter des services qui ne sont pas développés et permettre également au noyau de la famille de pouvoir bénéficier également d'un accès à l'éducation, et produire du lait pour une insertion au marché. Et vous avez une autre partie du cheptel qui se permet d'aller en transhumance. Je reviendrai un peu sur la transhumance avec ses effets variants. Donc, il y a un savoir-faire sur cette gestion du troupeau, savoir choisir le noyau qui doit rester et savoir choisir le noyau qui va aller en transhumance. Le deuxième élément que je trouve aussi très important à souligner, c'est après la gestion du troupeau, conduite du troupeau. Et cette conduite du troupeau alterne à la fois une sélection d'espèces et en plus de la sélection, vous avez ce que j'appellerais la zocorie, qui est une forme qui permet à la fois aux animaux de paître sur des pâturages et de les fertiliser. Et cela permet une intégration des systèmes à la fois agricoles et végétales, et cela donne une perspective qui n'est pas exploitée dans ce que j'appelais des effets porteurs d'une transition écologique en milieu pastoral. Donc, il y a résumé la conduite du troupeau, vous avez la gestion du troupeau et vous avez un élément qui est très important sur lequel nous avons aussi beaucoup travaillé, qui concerne beaucoup plus un peu les réflexes et les capacités à se déplacer. Et cela permet de mettre en exergue un peu ce que j'appellerais les campagnes. En fonction de la configuration des campagnes, les mouvements sont à la fois régulés, des nord vers le sud, comme vient de le dire également nos prédécesseurs, la dame et Madame Konaté. Vous avez le mouvement du bétail. Et ces mouvements du bétail aujourd'hui sont de plus en plus fréquents, à la fois par le contexte sécuritaire dans lequel nous sommes, mais également par rapport à l'installation soit précoce des campagnes, à l'installation tardive des campagnes. Et c'est dans ce sens que je souligne et je voudrais attirer et vraiment remercier l'OIM d'avoir mis à notre disposition les outils utilisés pour la migration, et un rendez-vous de travail a permis à la fois de trouver une synergie entre les outils utilisés pour la migration et le savoir-faire des communautés pastorales pour rendre performants les innovations technologiques utilisées par l'OIM que j'appelais le tracking tool transhumance. Et ce tracking tool transhumance aujourd'hui est assez très important parce qu'il aide à rationaliser les mouvements du bétail. Et en rationalisant les mouvements du bétail, on aide à la fois à faire face aux conflits, on renforce la résilience des communautés pastorales et on met au service également, je dirais, des planifications qui sont plus ou moins adaptées au temps à travers des plans d'urgence qui ressortent de ce tracking pour transhumance. Et le dernier élément que je voudrais souligner, c'est la dimension sociale également de ce savoir-faire, entre la redistribution sociale qu'on fait aux éleveurs, entre éleveurs, par rapport à ceux qui ont perdu leurs animaux, il y a une sorte de ce que nous appelons le hapanai. C'est une forme de redistribution sociale, un plan social. Je pense que ce levier n'a pas été suffisamment activé dans le renforcement de la résilience communautaire. La dimension sociale, le savoir-faire, l'intégration également des liens qui permet cette redistribution du cheptel, permet de renforcer la résilience parce que l'adaptation et la mitigation, à mon avis, sont plutôt les deux leviers sur lesquels on doit concentrer pour pouvoir renforcer également les communautés pastorales dans leurs stratégies et dans les approches pour faire face au changement climatique. En résumé, je pourrais dire qu'il y a vraiment un volet très important entre la recherche, entre les communautés pastorales, entre le savoir-faire des acteurs pour créer une sorte de hub qui va se permettre d'intégrer ce que j'appellerais l'écoculture pastorale, qui va permettre d'explorer une agroécologie, mais qui est adaptée aux communautés pastorales, à une sensibilité pastorale, et qui permet en même temps de valoriser un certain nombre d'outils qui sont classiquement utilisés pour la migration. Voilà ce que je voulais dire en termes du panel et des éléments que je juge assez importants à partager avec vous. Et merci pour cette opportunité que nous avons offerte.
Mr. Blama, merci nous pour votre participation. I would like to thank all the panelists. I would like to invite them to have their cameras on so that we can pass to a round of questions. And we would try to see how if we can motivate a discourse. I would invite all the colleagues listening, and we have more than 180 people listening to us. Please put questions for our panelists. Take now this opportunity of engaging with these experts on a dialogue about your concerns, your suggestions, ideas that you may have. I think we have a lot of diverse and very rich panel. And so I would invite you to put on the chat your questions. I have one question already. I will address the question to Ms. Nafissatou. There is a question from one of our colleagues, and the question is, as the private sector, how do you see the role of the Burkina diaspora in the face of these challenges? Let's try to make concise answers. I think we have a bit of space due to limited questions, but over to you, Ms. Nafissatou.
I would like to answer in French, since I think the person actually asked me the question in French. Is that okay?
Yes, yes, please. My limitation should not. We are very open here to adjust.
All right. En fait, la diaspora pourrait absolument investir dans le secteur privé au Burkina, parce qu'en ce moment, on a plusieurs projets qui se passent au Burkina qui sont de mettre en place des centrales électriques qui vont être gérées par la Sonabel, mais ce sont des personnes privées qui généralement investissent, mais malheureusement, en général, ce n'est pas la diaspora burkinabé. Donc, la diaspora peut absolument investir dans les secteurs pour faire face à ces défis-là, comme vous avez dit. Il y a plusieurs manières d'investir. Ils peuvent investir directement avec des secteurs prêter des systèmes solaires chez eux et puis mettre un pourcentage pour récupérer ensuite derrière. Donc ça, c'est complètement de privé à privé. Ou vous pouvez aussi passer par des banques. Et généralement, c'est ce que beaucoup de gens font. Vous pouvez passer par des banques pour prêter votre argent pour l'énergie verte. Merci.
Thank you so much. I don't have, I cannot see more questions on the chat. I would once again incentivize our audience to make questions in the language that you feel more comfortable. We have simultaneous translation. We have the experts. On the in-between of these, I would discuss with, I would like to ask to Mubarak a very short question. We talked about finance. We talked about the importance of making finance arrive to persons. From your perspective, what do you think is one of the limitations of these questions are financial literacy? How can you think we can bring financial literacy into this discourse, and how we can make finances arrive more easy to individuals, not only to institutions, but to individuals? I think there's a very interesting dynamics on the flows of financing. So I would put this question to you, Mubarak. Over to you.
No, thank you very much for the question. I think demystifying finance is one of the key elements that we need to, us, first of all, as financial institutions, we need to work on to attract more, because the easiest we make the eligibility criteria understood, the easiest we make all our guidelines and requirements understood, the more we will get, will attract project developers and financial institutions. And I think with that, we need to work on capacity enhancement, capacity building. I think in the previous panel, I heard Nadia talking about how it's important to capacitate those that are at the bottom of the line, and those are very important to work with. And even in terms of understanding the needs of the stakeholders that the banks supports, it's very important that we have a primary discussion, because at the end of the day, as a financial institution, if you have the resources available and you don't have the projects as well, then I mean, there is no your existence is not that important. And so we need to work on those kind of activities. We need to speak in the language of the people that lend our resources, and to make sure that our resources are adapted to their needs and what they want to use the investments for. If in if our stakeholders have basic financial needs, and then we have all this sophisticated instruments and all, I mean, it will not make any sense and point. So it's very important that we have that conversation as well. I think Nafisa, before she starts her conversation, she said something that is very important, that private sector is actually a partner in this conversation. Private sector needs to be the center of our initiative. The lender is really the first products that the bank needs to look at before designing and developing all these instruments and products and so on and so forth. Also, when you look at the stakeholders that we finance, sometimes we make mistakes because of the lack of communication between us, the lack of understanding between us and the stakeholders that we finance. We were doing a project, for example, where we were trying to capacitate the youth, the young men, to do the maintenance of the solar panels, for example. While at the end of the day, when you train them 6 months after they have a lot of resources, they buy a motorbike, they go to the city to start making, doing the transport of to transport and so on and so forth. So, and they were not staying there. So at the end of the day, we figured that actually we needed to look at those people that would never move from the areas where we train the people. And we ended up figuring out that you have to train older people, older ladies that will never move from there. Those are the people that you train to be able to maintain those solar panels. So we always need to have this conversation and this communication between us, financial institutions, and the stakeholders that we finance, to better understand and see the needs of their circumstances.
Thank you, Mubarak. I think that open dialogue and that bringing people together and understanding the practical realities is very important. We have 2 questions. I will call now our colleagues that have 3 questions that are, the hands are being raised. I will call the persons by name, ask that they introduce their name and direct the question to one of the panelists, make the question, and then we'll do these in rounds. We will do 3 questions now. The panelists answer, and then we allow colleagues to make more questions. So I would now like to ask Mr. Dembele to make his question indicating to which panelist or open, and then we'll go forward. Mr. Dembele. I don't think he's being able to listen to us because I don't hear sound. I would ask Mr. Bodal Ndiat to make his question to the panel, and I will address the questions on the chat after. Mr. Bodal?
Manuel,
yes.
if I may, I think we can like remind the participants that they also have to unmute themselves. We do
Yes.
it from our end. Please unmute yourself when you want to take the floor.
Mr. Dembele, can I ask you to unmute yourself? Let's try.
Manuel, while waiting, we can go
Well,
in the
we
chat.
can go to, yes, we have a question from Mr. Domingos Diogo, which I assume is for Mr. Blama. And I'll try to translate this from the Portuguese, which is how can valorization and integration of local initiatives on cattle rationalization and transhumance from the point of view of the scarcity of resources like water and the impacts of climate change be addressed? I think it's from a technological point of view. Mr. Dembla,
je n'ai pas la traduction en français, hein?
Un minute, s'il vous plaît. We will ask our colleagues from the Secretariat to try and do the translation and give you in the chat, but we have a question from Mr. Yumiko. Thank you very much for a very good discussion with the diverse presentations. People in the region have been migrating for hundreds of years. How can we make more positive migration and have the young people resilient and resourceful? Also, it is very difficult for the young people to get a loan to start, maintain a business. What can we do to make the banks and investors more youth-friendly? Any successful examples? I would ask Mubarak to respond to this, and we will try to get the translation for Mr. Blama on the other question. Over to you, Mubarak.
Thank you very much, Manuel, and thank you, Yumiko, for your question. I think it's an important way to see migration. People usually think when we're talking about migration, it's more from Africa to Europe and so on and so forth, which is actually not true, because you have inner migration in Africa that is very important, and we don't look at it in terms of how we develop our infrastructures in our cities and so on and so forth. We centralize all the infrastructures and all the development in the big cities, and we forget that because of the lack of infrastructure in the rural areas or in the smallest parts of the towns and cities, it makes those movements, people have to move because maybe they need, for medical reasons, for example, they need an hospital more closer to their homes and so on and so forth, because of the lack of transport and all that. So we need to make sure in designing our infrastructures as well, we take all those aspects into consideration. One of the things that I will mention and say it again and over again in terms of development of activities of startups, if I can mention it like that, is that yes, of course, there are very strict guidelines and requirements from financial institutions, but there is a big lack of homework done by the project developers themselves. And that's an area where we need to bring solutions. We need to work closer with the project developers as well, is the fact that they need to work more on looking at eligibility criteria before going to project developers. I gave an example in Nairobi on one panel where I was looking at startups, for example, and there is this startup that was always coming to a bank, the development bank BWAD, for projects that someone told the project was very good, a very good project, and of course, looking at the project, it was very good. But unfortunately, the minimum amount required for BWAD to finance this project was higher than what the project needed. So over and over, the project will come back to BWAD, and then it will never get a positive response, but then never went to those other financial institutions that will look at them. And an instrument like BWAD, for example, to fund and finance very small banks and very small projects, have credit lines that they put within the commercial banks, so that those commercial banks can easily finance these small size projects. So you need to look at all these aspects in order to develop and design your projects. And I understand, I can hear it, because I've also worked on private initiatives myself, and it's really difficult to find banks and financial institutions that will work together with you. But there are other sources of funding that you can look at. Nafisatu was talking about earlier, was talking about the diaspora, for example, and we have seen some of the diaspora working on some projects, crowdfunding, for example, as like instruments like crowdfunding to finance some startup initiatives, some project initiatives within the country. So I think we need to also look at sources of financing in terms of the rights eligibility criteria that are incorporated in the project development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mubarak. I would just, I think that Mr. Blama received the question, so he will be able to answer the question. I would just ask Mr. Ndiat, that has his hands raised, if he could unmute himself, make the question, and then we'll respond to these two questions. And after we will go to Ms. Camille. Mr. Ndiat, can you please unmute and make your question to our panelists? Bon, we will wait for
modérateur, ma question a été traduite là, celle qui me concerne, et sur comment la valorisation des initiatives locales pourrait être faite à l'échelle régionale. Et dans la valorisation du savoir-faire local, nous avons, en tant que réseau régional, une valeur ajoutée qui sont les échelles transfrontalières. Ce sont des échelles également qui sont entre deux pays. Et c'est plutôt là que nous essayons de valoriser tout ce qui concerne la dynamique de la mobilité. Par exemple, derrière cette transhumance ou cette mobilité, il y a toute une organisation sociale. Et l'organisation sociale, on l'a valorisée avec les innovations technologiques mises en place par l'OIM avec nous. C'est ce que nous avons appelé des sentinelles. Des sentinelles, c'est des leaders d'éleveurs qui sont positionnés le long des parcours et qui ont pour objectif la mise à la disposition des acteurs de l'information à temps à travers ce que nous avons appelé soit des alertes événementielles, des alertes préventives et des alertes qui permettent à la preuve de prendre en compte les difficultés. Un autre point que nous avons valorisé, c'est que dans le savoir-faire, il y a toute une information qui paraît banale, c'est qu'à n'importe quel moment, on est en mesure de localiser nos membres de part et d'autre de la frontière, ce que nous avons appelé des zones de concentration. Des zones de concentration, lorsqu'elles sont identifiées à temps, elles permettent de prévenir les conflits. Les zones de concentration, lorsqu'elles sont identifiées à temps, elles permettent de discuter avec les acteurs et les élus locaux pour des processus de négociation d'accès, à la fois d'accès et à la fois d'intervention. Et à travers également ce savoir-faire local, nous arrivons, par exemple, des animaux qui quittent un pays de départ, normalement nos pays du Sahel, à préparer leur arrivée dans les pays d'accueil, qui sont pratiquement les pays d'accueil. Aujourd'hui, je prends un exemple bien précis, nous avons développé un outil, le même avec l'OIM Côte d'Ivoire, où nous sommes en mesure de dire aujourd'hui que vous avez pratiquement 115 000 têtes de bétail dans la région de Bunkani, qui est au nord de la Côte d'Ivoire, et vous avez 200 000 têtes de bétail qui est à Tchologo. La connaissance de ces effectifs permet de préparer les interventions et des appuis qui y vont avec. Et avec ça, nous travaillons aussi avec nos communautés économiques régionales. Il y a la CEDEAO, il y a le SILT et il y a le Liptako Gourma, en essayant, comme je l'ai dit, de trouver la meilleure façon d'une interaction entre les innovations technologiques que nous importons, le savoir-faire local de nos membres et en même temps aussi la volonté politique sans laquelle aucune action durable n'est possible. Voilà ce que je pouvais dire par rapport à la question qui m'était posée.
Merci, Blama. I would ask now Mr. Bodal, which has his mic on, to finally make his question. My apologies for the technological challenges. Mr. Bodal.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Je suis donc Boudal Ndiaye, je suis le directeur de publication de La Voix du Migrant, qui est un journal sénégalais qui s'intéresse à la migration. Et en même temps, je suis le secrétaire général de l'Association des journalistes en migration et sécurité. Bon, merci de m'avoir donné la parole. Je félicite les différents intervenants. Merci de nous avoir quand même donné un aperçu sur la déclaration de Kampala, qui est vraiment méconnue ici dans nos pays. Et j'aimerais savoir, est-ce que vous pensez au rôle de la presse dans la lutte contre la migration irrégulière, qui prend quand même une proportion inquiétante, surtout dans le Sahel? Merci beaucoup.
Mr. Bodal, merci. Your question is directed to one of the panelists or to IOM in general?
À l'OIM en général.
IOM in general. Okay, I would park that question and I'll ask my colleague Hind, that was on the previous panel on behalf of the regional office of IOM in Dakar, to answer that. But we have a question from Tiemoko Mark Dembele for Ms. Nafisatu. I would ask Ms. Nafisatu to address this question. It's in the chat.
All right. So I will read the question in French, as I don't know if everybody has seen the question. So, comment faire pour participer la diaspora sur les projets productifs collectifs qui aujourd'hui se présentent comme des alternatives à la mobilité irrégulière dans le contexte de changement climatique? Monsieur Dambélé, je pense que la question, c'est d'abord pourquoi est-ce qu'il y a la mobilité irrégulière? Quand on parle de changement climatique dans la mobilité irrégulière, en général, ce qui se passe, vous avez des endroits où, par exemple, il n'y a plus d'eau. Il y avait un monsieur au départ dans le premier panel qui avait dit que le changement climatique n'est pas la cause de la mobilité. Et en fait, parfois, c'est vraiment la cause. Si vous êtes dans un endroit où il n'y a plus d'eau et que vous avez du bétail et que vous vivez de faire de l'agriculture, mais il n'y a plus d'eau, vous êtes obligé de partir. Donc, aujourd'hui, par exemple, au Burkina, je pense que vous êtes burkinabé, il y a beaucoup d'endroits où on a besoin de faire des puits. Et ces puits-là, en général, on peut mettre des panneaux solaires pour aider les gens à pouvoir tirer l'eau du sol, mais il faut pouvoir investir dans ces puits-là et il faut voir que les personnes donc, qui vont utiliser les puits dans ces villages-là puissent rembourser. Et la diaspora peut absolument, encore une fois, participer. Il est plus simple de monter un projet et aller vers les banques. Parce que une des choses aussi qui est assez difficile en Afrique de l'Ouest et particulièrement au Burkina, c'est qu'il faut prêter l'argent par une institution qui est préférable. Donc, il faut partir avec ces projets chez une banque, que la banque approuve et que la banque puisse prêter, qu'on puisse prêter l'argent pour au projet par les banques. Et ça, c'est une manière d'essayer de ne pas faire partir les gens comme mon copanéliste, c'est de ça que mon copanéliste a parlé, parce que de temps en temps aussi, on investit et surtout avec les jeunes, ils partent à un moment. Donc, il faut investir et pouvoir être sûr que le système reste en place et peut être maintenu et en place par les gens qui ne vont pas quitter la région. C'est un peu ça ma réponse. Merci.
Merci, Nafiso. I think we are arriving to, unfortunately, to the end of our time. I think we can actually answer 2 more questions. We will have our colleague from the regional office of IOM in Dakar addressing the question to our colleague that just made it, Bodal. But I have seen that since a long time, Mr. Diago Diagne Nianie has tried to talk to us. He raised his hand. I would ask him to unblock his microphone and make his question as the second last question, if he's listening to us. Mr. Diago? Can you unmute yourself and make the question? I see that you have access to your microphone. If you could unmute yourself. No. Mr. Diago, can you hear me? Just unmute yourself, please.
Je vais ouvrir mon micro.
Ah, parfait.
C'est ouvert.
C'est ouvert, c'est ouvert,
bon?
madame. Oui.
Vous m'entendez?
Oui, oui, parfait. S'il vous plaît.
Voilà, je ne suis pas monsieur, je suis Madame Diago Ndiaye.
Pardon.
Je suis Madame Diago Ndiaye, la présidente régionale et nationale du réseau Paix et Sécurité pour les femmes de l'espace CEDEAO. Je voudrais juste rappeler qu'on a toujours souhaité, nous, avoir comme partenaire l'OIM. C'est vrai, notre point commun, c'est la paix et la sécurité. Mais on ne peut pas aborder ces questions de paix, sécurité et développement et occulter les questions de migration et de changement climatique. Je vais m'excuser parce que j'étais ce matin dans un autre panel. Mais M. Ibrahim Dien, notre chargé de programme, je pense, a participé au premier panel et a intervenu. Ce que je voudrais dire, c'est que la migration, la paix, la sécurité, surtout l'extrémisme violent, sont intimement liés. Et c'est une question qu'il faut prendre au sérieux. S'y ajoute maintenant le problème des changements climatiques. Parce que comme l'a dit Madame Nafissatou Konaté, cette question de changement climatique interpelle donc la mobilité des populations. Parce que si on n'a pas de ressources, que ce soit de l'eau, que ce soit de bois de chauffe, je dis bien de bois de chauffe, mais d'autres ressources dont les populations rurales ont besoin, ces populations sont obligées de se déplacer et de faire des kilomètres pour pouvoir trouver des céréales pour nourrir leur famille, pour pouvoir nourrir leur bétail, pour pouvoir faire des cultures, donc, etc. C'est pour ça que c'est des questions qui sont liées. Maintenant, quand je parle d'extrémisme violent, ces jeunes qui partent en migration, et, comme vous le constatez, la moitié donc, reste en mer ou bien dans les sables du désert. Ces jeunes restent, s'ils n'atteignent pas leurs objectifs, ils sont facilement utilisés ou happés par les djihadistes qui peuvent les utiliser pour d'autres fins, à travers la mise à disposition de moyens, à travers le lavement de cerveau, etc. Donc, je pense que nous respectons, on travaille sur ces questions et vraiment, on demande un partenariat pour pouvoir réaliser les différents programmes et projets que nous avons dans ce domaine. Maintenant, comme l'a dit
On n'entend plus. Do you still hear? Yeah. Allô,
Oui,
madame? Oui, voilà.
Madame Diago? Non.
Que le temps qui m'a été donné.
Madame Diago?
Non, non, vous pouvez continuer, madame.
Oui, oui.
Oui, d'accord. Donc, je voudrais dire que nous avons au niveau de notre réseau une section que nous avons mis en place depuis 2 ans. Cette section s'appelle les jeunes porteurs de dynamique communautaire. Tout ce qui est actualité, questions sur les violences, la paix, la sécurité, l'autonomisation des femmes, la participation des populations, la gestion des communautés. Tout ce travail-là est confié aux jeunes qui font la sensibilisation et la vulgarisation au niveau des communautés. C'est pour ça que je dis qu'à ce titre, ces jeunes également pourraient être de très bons relais pour la vulgarisation et la sensibilisation concernant cette déclaration de Kampala. Je vous remercie et je souhaite que peut-être qu'on va redynamiser le partenariat entre le RESPECO et l'OIM. Merci beaucoup.
Madame Diago, merci pour votre parole. I would now hand over to our colleague Hind Benani from the regional office to be able to answer the pending question. Over to Hind.
Thank you so much, Manuel. Et merci à tous pour la richesse et l'engagement dans les discussions et les questions qui sont posées. Alors, sur la question des médias en particulier, oui, clairement, les médias sont un acteur extrêmement important pour l'OIM et je pense qu'on commence à travailler sur ces questions-là il y a plusieurs années maintenant. Les médias étaient une de nos principales, on va dire, cibles, mais aussi partenaires. Parce que l'objectif aussi aujourd'hui, c'est quel type de narratif et quel type de récit on construit ensemble sur la question de la mobilité humaine dans le contexte du changement climatique, et ce qui rejoint aussi un peu la question de la dernière intervenante qui a tout à fait raison sur le rôle de la jeunesse, sur la question de la sécurité climatique, etc. Il faut que nous construisions ensemble et que nous contribuions à construire ensemble un discours qui soit juste pour sur la migration dans cette région-là, notre région. J'ose l'appeler ma région, moi je suis marocaine, mais je me sens très attachée à cette région-là aussi, l'Afrique de l'Ouest et du Centre. Donc effectivement, c'est très très important qu'on ait des discussions clairement. C'est vrai qu'au début, quand j'ai commencé à travailler sur ces questions, on avait beaucoup de journalistes qui nous contactaient en disant nous pourrions parler à des réfugiés climatiques, à des migrants climatiques, etc. Et donc on a eu tout un travail aussi de pédagogie à faire pour comprendre qu'on n'était pas en train de créer une nouvelle catégorie de migrants, mais qu'on était en train de mieux comprendre ce qui était sous-jacent aux interactions entre changement climatique et mobilité humaine. Donc clairement, les médias, ce sont nos partenaires, ce sont aussi les bénéficiaires de nos programmes. On vous encourage à vous rapprocher de nous sur ces questions-là. Je vais mettre mon email dans le chat, comme ça, si jamais vous avez des questions, je peux vous mettre aussi en relation avec nos collègues qui travaillent là-dessus. Sur la question de la sécurité climatique, clairement, c'est très, très important et merci beaucoup, Madame, d'avoir rappelé tout ça. Ce qui est important aussi encore, je pense que c'est aussi en termes de discours et de narratif, ce qui est important, c'est de ne pas stigmatiser et de ne pas contribuer à la stigmatisation. La mobilité humaine est une formidable capacité d'adaptation au changement climatique et elle doit être aussi considérée comme telle. La jeunesse sahélienne en particulier est une jeunesse qui a un grand dynamisme, un grand potentiel aussi. C'est très, très important aussi de souligner l'importance du narratif qu'on construit autour de toutes ces questions-là. Et donc, nous sommes là, notamment avec nos collègues de UNOWAS, UNOWAS, donc c'est le Bureau des Nations Unies pour l'Afrique de l'Ouest et le Sahel, avec lesquels nous travaillons aussi beaucoup sur ces questions de sécurité climatique, notamment avec les collègues du Programme des Nations Unies pour l'environnement et les collègues de la Convention sur le changement climatique, la CNUC, qui sont basés à Lomé. Donc clairement, je pense que tout ça, ce sont des questions très importantes. Donc je vais mettre mon mail, en tout cas, dans le chat. On est très heureux, en fait, de sentir cet enthousiasme et cette volonté de retrousser les manches tous ensemble pour travailler sur ces questions-là. Merci beaucoup. Je pense que j'étais assez longue pour Manuel et il est temps qu'on passe la parole à la jeunesse maintenant. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, Hind, for your words. I would like to invite our panelists to open their cameras so that I can actually thank them and say farewell for their participation today. Ms. Nafisato, Mubarak, Mr. Blama, I am deeply privileged to have been able to share with you the space of today. Your time, your insights have been very rich. The conversation with the group of attendants also. I hope that we can continue these conversations. This is intended to be a first part of a longer dialogue that we want to have in the region and across the continent. So I thank you so very much for having been with us. It has been a pleasure. I would like to stress from the point of view of IOM that we put a grand emphasis on the importance of making sure that people all over the world are safe, empowered, and informed to make decisions about their mobility, either to stay, either to move. And we would like to count with the whole of society, the whole of government, capacities, resources, and intentions to make this a reality for millions of people that will have to suffer the adverse impacts of climate change. So thank you so much to all of you. And I would hand over to Assis Sato in case we have a pending issue. A pleasure being here with all of you today. And thank you so much for your contributions. Asisatu, over to you.
Thank you very much, Manuel, and thank you for this very inspiring discussion and panel, because these were concrete ideas, how actually we are working on climate on the ground, and with these concrete examples. So I'm very glad this discussion actually triggered thoughts and ideas we can bring to the IDM next week. Now, I have the privilege to give the floor to Nadia Owusu from Panel 1, youth advocate, young beautiful woman from Accra, Ghana, on the conclusion remarks of this event. Nadia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much for inviting me to give the closing remarks. I'm very grateful to be here. My name is Nadia Nanaya Owusu, and I represent the youth delegates who were at the climate change conference at Africa Climate Week, and also at the pre-sessions on climate mobility in the nexus of human mobility. First of all, I would like to send out my heartfelt appreciation to the regional office for Western and Central Africa, IOM, for this session and thinking it's inclusive to add youth voices at the center of the conversation. I would also like to express my appreciation to everyone who dedicated their time to be here to share their insights and their works and on their plans on advancing the Continental Kampala Declaration on Migration and Climate Change. For us, this session is just a pre-discussion to the preparation of the 2023 International Dialogue on Migration, which will be held from the 5th to 6th October in Geneva, based on the same theme, Think About Tomorrow, Act Today, the future of human mobility and climate change. For us as young people, we are dedicated to advancing conversation around climate mobility in the nexus of human mobility, climate change, environment, and climate change. We deem it important to be seen as an important and integral stakeholder as we navigate conversations, as we advance major action that will be taken away from the ministerial signing. For us, we believe it's not more about talk, it's more about action. So for us, it's important to see us as a stakeholder, to see us as a collaborator, to see us as a partner. As we go away, we navigate how we can do this together as one continent within Western and Central Africa. We hope that everyone here sees us as a stakeholder, everyone sees us as a partner, and we can work together to make sure that we see climate change and see that things around climate change and human mobility are the center of every action we do. Just like Christopher Gascon said, we can no longer talk about climate change without talking about the human mobility factor. So I leave you all here ensuring that you make sure it's an inclusive approach you are taking within your country, within your agency, within your department, to see it's possible to add youth voices, to add youth action, to add young voices, young interpreters, young vibrant actions in everything you're doing. So I'll hand it over back to the moderator. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nadia. I am so glad to hear these words from you. These are vibrant words because you need the voice of the youth to be taken into account, and the IDM is a very good opportunity for that. So we are coming to an end of this event, and I think that we have taken away some key takeaways that we will going to use during the IDMs in the next few days. And I would like to thank again the moderators for the facilitation of the sessions and the quality of the sessions. Very interesting. Experience was talking here, expertise was talking. So very glad hearing people with concrete action having this conversation with us, IOM, as the leading organization for migration. I would like also to thank Christopher Gascon, our regional director in Western Central Africa, and also the ministry from Sierra Leone who took time to come here to have this conversation with us to show that governments are there, they are engaged, and they believe in the climate agenda. And this is great to hear. So at this stage, I would like also to remind that the recordings and access to the regional pre-IDM events can be done throughout the event web page. So you can access everything here, the recording of the session on the web page, as well as the regional office for West and Central Africa and our YouTube account. I cannot finish this event without thanking very, very much Hind Benasawi and all the colleagues who have worked very hard to make this happen today. So I wish you a very nice day and thank you for all your thoughts and time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Aissatou, for our great master of ceremony. Thank you so much.
Thank you.